Hello, good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting for the Paso Robles City Council for Tuesday, December the 1st. Before we open the meeting, I'll read the following. In compliance with the state and county shelter-at-home orders and as allowed by the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, which allows for a deviation of teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act, City Council meetings will be held by teleconference only until further notice. Rather than attending in person, the resident should call 805-865-7276 to provide public comment via phone. The phone line will be open just prior to the start of the closed session meeting and again prior to the start of the regular meeting. Written public comments can be submitted via email to cityclerk@prcity.com prior to 12 noon on the day of the council meeting to be posted as an addendum to the agenda. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item by number or name. City Council meetings will be live streamed during the meeting and also available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. With that, I will call our meeting to order and invite everyone to mute their microphones with the exception of Councilman Hammond, please, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Join with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. For our invocation tonight, we have Pastor Christopher Cole. Pastor Cole, are you with us?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, as 2020 begins to draw to a close, we are reminded once again of your ongoing merciful and good work within a glorious, yet too often broken world. This year, we've seen political, economic, social, and physical brokenness. COVID-19, our recent elections, unveiled injustices, criminal acts, and various global natural disasters have exposed our weaknesses. We are reminded that we are a people in need of a God to intervene, to bring justice, to set the world aright. We see the brokenness within ourselves, having too often given way to our own worst tendencies of pride, selfishness, fear, and oppression. We're reminded that we need your grace, your forgiveness, your healing for the afflicted, your binding up of the brokenhearted, your restoring the cast down, and your renewal of our society. We are also thankful for all the ways you manifest your grace to us through the wisdom and skill you have provided to our county medical personnel who have responded with bravery, diligence, and compassion to this ongoing epidemic. We thank you that you have kept our region from being as afflicted as badly as many others. We ask you to stop this pandemic and give all who are in responsibility the wisdom to guide us through these days. Give us, as a community, the humility to follow sound medical counsel that we might participate in stopping the spread of this disease. We also beseech you humbly for economic protection and provision throughout our community for those struggling due to the loss of business. We ask that you restore our workplaces and grant us wisdom to know how to work together in ways that limit the financial and social impacts of this pandemic. We're thankful that we live in a nation of wise laws, fair elections, participative democracy, and sound justice. Though we lament our imperfections, we pray for healing and patience for many who experience various forms of injustice. We're also grateful for wise and sacrificial leaders who are doing their best to lead us in trying times. We thank you for our mayor, city council members, city managers, city staff, and other civic leaders who have shouldered a heavy burden during these last few months. We pray that they may lead well, govern effectively, and do that which is beneficial to all who live in the community of Paso Robles. Let all who participate in tonight's meeting forsake selfish willfulness, seek good not only for themselves but also others, particularly the weak and disadvantaged. Grant all who participate in these meetings the ability to listen well and respectfully, even when there are areas of disagreement. Give all of us wisdom, true peace, and hearts that seek to do good to our neighbors. We thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, the God-man made flesh, who is the answer to every heart's longing. It is in his name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, for that invocation. With that, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Gregory,
Here.
Councilmember Hammond,
Here.
Councilmember Strong,
Present.
Mayor Martin.
And I'm here. At this time, we'd like to take a few moments to introduce staff members who are online with us tonight. So if we could have that, please.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director. With me tonight's Darren Nash, our City Planner, Dave Athey, City Engineer, and Darcy Delgado, our Associate Planner.
Christopher Alecko, Interim Public Works Director. With me tonight is Matt Thompson, Wastewater Resources Manager, and Patty Gwathmey, Industrial Waste Manager.
Julie Dolan, Community Services Director, joined by Frida Berman, Maintenance Superintendent.
Ty Lewis, Police Chief.
Jonathan Stornetta, Fire Chief.
Brian Cornell, Director of Administrative Services. And then with me tonight is Shannon Fouts, the HR Manager.
Sarah Johnson-Rios, Assistant City Manager, joined by Melissa Martin, City Clerk, Shauna Howenstein, Civic Engagement Coordinator, Dave McHugh, IT Manager, and Paul Sloan, Economic Development Manager.
Kimberly Hood, Interim City Attorney.
Tom Frucci, City Manager.
Thank you all. Prior to this regular meeting, we had a closed session meeting of the Paso Robles City Council. I will ask the City Attorney now if there was any reportable action from that meeting.
The City Council convened in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 regarding one item, public employment for the City Manager position, and gave direction, but there was no reportable action.
Thank you. Next up, I'm pleased to make a very special recommendation, a recognition and proclamation, a plaque presentation to the outgoing City Treasurer, Mike Compton. Mike Compton is with us tonight. Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Welcome. You know, you're one of the few people that I show up at City Hall and look at and say, you know, he started about the same time I did around here. It's been a while since we got together at the City Council level, Mike, and you've done a wonderful job for us as our treasurer over the years. Good counsel financially, and now you're going to be retiring, and we want to recognize you. We've prepared a very nice plaque. Under normal circumstances, we would have you out in front of everyone getting pictures taken, etc. As we all know, 2020 has been anything but normal. So with that, I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to you for all the service to the city, and I will give the opportunity for the other council members to do the same. But I want to read for the community the inscription on the plaque that you're receiving. On the occasion of his retirement after 32 years as an elected official, the city of Paso Robles would like to recognize Michael J. Compton for his diligence and dedication in serving the community of El Paso Robles as city treasurer. That was 1988 through this year, 2020. So Mike, thank you and congratulations on your retirement.
Well, thank you very much for the recognition. I do appreciate it.
Would you like to make any comments? This is going to be your opportunity. This is the last time as an official. So,
I don't really have much to say. I've enjoyed all 32 years of being the treasurer. I actually started in February of 1987, so I have nearly 34 years in service with Paso Robles, and when you add my other two cities in, I've had 45 years of public service. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I must admit that my mindset now is I'm looking forward to retiring and being out of the service.
Understandably so. I want to give the opportunity to our council members to say a few words, starting with Councilman Gregory.
Hey, Mike, I'd just like to say a heartfelt thank you to you for your diligence and your stewardship in our finances. You've really gone way above and beyond your duty of serving us, and you've just done an excellent job of keeping us sound and safe, and with our funding and all our reserves. I just appreciate all your knowledge and stewardship, and wanted to say thank you and enjoy your retirement, please. Thank you.
And Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, it's like kind of a 14 years of knowing Mike, and I think a little before that even personally. And I've always thought, again, that seeking his advice and the conservative advice that you've always given to the council to deliberate on, and the sound wisdom, especially on the financial matters that the city has to do. Again, these are tax dollars, and again, I think the public is all the better for you all these years and your stewardship of our finances. And I really appreciate the service, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you up there in the Sierras one of these days. Thank you, Mike.
Councilman Strong.
Yes, Mike. As you know, I've been following you almost since the beginning of your career, and always been admiring your impeccable taste in clothing and your personal appearance, as well as admiring the fact that when other cities were struggling and even going bankrupt, you kept us on an even keel, and you saw that we were really in good financial shape. You were an amazing city treasurer, and thank you so much for your service. And I hope that if we really get in any kind of difficulty, we can give you a call and get some advice. Thank you.
And Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Mike, I know that I have not been able to work alongside you for very long, but I do appreciate all your service, your hard work, and your dedication to our community, and enjoy your retirement. Well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mike. Thanks for being here with us online tonight. Enjoy your retirement and hang that plaque in a prominent place.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon. Moving on now, item number 1 on our agenda tonight is the declaration of results of consolidated general election from November the 3rd. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor Martin. Pursuant to Section 36503 of the California Government Code, the City of Paso Robles holds its general municipal election on the same day as the statewide general election. Earlier this year, the city approved resolutions calling for a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, and to be conducted by the San Luis Obispo County Election Department for the purpose of electing 2 members of the City Council for full terms of 4 years each, and a city treasurer for a full term of 4 years. Additionally, the City Council authorized that a general sales tax measure be placed on the same ballot for consideration. This measure was designated as City of Paso Robles Measure J20. The county clerk has conducted the official canvass of votes cast in the November 3rd, 2020 election and has declared and certified the results. Total voter registration for the City of Paso Robles was 18,373, with a total number of 15,738 votes cast, resulting in an 85.66% voter turnout. Ryan Cornell received 100% of the votes cast for city treasurer and was elected for a 4-year term. In District 3, incumbent Steve Gregory ran unopposed and received 100% of the votes cast and was re-elected for a 4-year term. In District 4, there were 2 candidates seeking to be elected to the office of council member. Incumbent Fred Strong received 61.61% of the votes cast and was re-elected for a 4-year term. Ballot measure J20 required a simple majority of 50% plus 1 to pass and passed by 56.56%. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 20-XXX, reciting the facts and declaring the results of the November 3rd, 2020 consolidated general election as made available by the County Elections Office.
Are we ready to go to council for questions?
No questions, Mr. Mayor, just a resolution.
Let's go from at the top of the list. Mr. Gregory, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond?
No questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Strong?
No, sir.
Ms. Garcia?
No, sir.
I see no one queued up online to make telephone comment. Has there been anybody call in that I'm not aware of?
No, sir.
We'll close public comment, bring it back to the council. I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 20XX, reciting the facts and swearing the results of the November 3rd, 2020 consolidated general election as made available by the county elections office.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Hammond. Any further discussion? Mr. Strong? Hearing nothing. Ms. Garcia?
No, sir.
Very good. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gregory,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia,
Aye.
Councilmember Strong,
Aye.
and Mayor Martin.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Item number 2, oaths of office and certificates of election for newly elected officials from the November election. I'll turn this over to City Clerk Melissa Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. City Manager Frucci will be giving a brief history of the oath.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. As the council members and Mr. Cornell know, but maybe members of the public don't know, in the state of California, all public officials are required to take the oath of office. It is a legal requirement, but we do it with much more than just the belief that we're adhering to a legal requirement. The oath is over 2,500 years old in the public sector, having originated with the Ephebic Oath in classical Athens. And coming down through the years, it has been amended, but it has always stood for one thing, and that is the commitment by our public officials to act on behalf of the public and seek the common good for the entire community for the long term. And that's one of the hallmarks of our democracy and one of the hallmarks of this city council, and obviously was adhered to by Mike Compton when he was treasurer. So we are at this point administering the oath to the 3 successful candidates and asking them to stand in front of a long line of people who have taken the oath and done everything in their power to leave the city greater and better than it was when it was entrusted to them. So, Madam City Clerk, if you would now administer the oath.
Thank you. Councilmember Strong, Councilmember Gregory, and Mr. Cornell, would you all please unmute your mics? And would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? And when I insert my name, please go ahead and insert your names. I, Melissa Martin.
I,
Fred Strong.
Brian Cornell.
Mr. Gregory.
I, Steve Gregory.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support.
That I will
support.
And defend the Constitution of the United States.
And defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the
Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies.
Against all
enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I
will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the
Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without
any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that
I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties of the office.
Discharge the duties
of the office.
Which I am about to enter. I do further swear. That in all matters concerning the city.
That
in all matters concerning the city.
I shall strive to promote the common good.
I shall strive to promote the common good.
To uphold the public trust.
To uphold the public trust.
Without fear or favor of any person.
without
fear or
fear
favor of
or
any
favor
person.
of any person,
and to leave the city greater and better than it was when entrusted to me.
And
and to leave the city
greater
and better
than it
than
was
it was when it was entrusted to me.
Congratulations to all of you. If you would take a moment and sign the oath certificates that you've received.
And as they're doing that, I would invite each one of these folks to make a few comments upon the occasion of their swearing in. I'll start with Mr. Cornell. Any thoughts as you begin on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited and very happy that the community has trusted me with this office. I know I have very large shoes to fill with Mike's 30 plus years of service, and I hope that I could match and or exceed all of the goodness that he's done for our community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory.
Yes, I'd like to thank all of the voters of Paso Robles who supported me in this tight race that I won. And I want to commit to the citizens of the city that I'll continue to work to keep the city sound financially, open for business and business friendly for our community and our businesses, and to be fair to everybody, and continue to listen and help in whatever way I can to make our city better and stronger as we go along. And I want to thank the citizens for enduring such a tough year in 2020 and going through the election process and seeing everything that's going on in our city. I'd like to thank all the staff for supporting our citizens and our citizens for supporting our local government and our elected officials. And we are here as your servants. I'm proud to be here and honored to be serving this community. And I love this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm humbled by the confidence the voters have shown me and thankful to my wife, Patty, for enduring 16 years of my being married, at least in spirit and concern, to the people of Paso Robles, and then being willing to put up with another 4 years. I'd like to thank also my committee treasurer and assistant treasurer, Pam Reynolds and Gretchen Bassett, my many committee supporters, the voters of the 4th District, and of course, my worthy opponent, Jacob Allred, who ran a respectful, gentlemanly campaign based on positive campaigning, unlike so many of the other campaigns we saw this election period. I look forward to continuing to serve through these difficult times to better times to come with the help of our very professional staff and the rest of our city council. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and thank you all for becoming involved in service to our community. It is a great dedication of time and effort to do this, and we appreciate the fact that you dedicated that time and effort to make this happen and worked so hard to be elected. We also thank those who ran but were not elected because they showed no less dedication than you, and we invite them to remain involved in the public process in the future. That's what keeps our community strong. Thank you. We move on now to presentations. We have a COVID-19 community update. I believe we're starting with Mr. Stornetta, our emergency services chief.
Good evening, Mayor Martin and members of the council. I'll wait till the slideshow comes up. If we could start on slide 3, please. Back one slide, please, Warren. Okay, we'll go ahead and get, there we go. Thank you. The state now has over 1,213,000 positive cases, which is an increase of approximately 174,000 cases since my last report to council. Total fatalities in the state have now risen to 19,141. This is an increase of 842 deaths since our last report. Case counts continue to, next slide please. Case counts continue to increase substantially statewide. The number of hospitalizations due to confirmed and suspected COVID-19 cases in California has reached a total of 9,049. This is an increase of 89% over the past 14 days. 51 counties are now in Tier 1 purple, the most significant of restrictive categories, and 99% of California's population are in the purple tier. Nearly 15,000 new daily infections were reported over the last week. Caseloads are now far outpacing the previous surge during the summer, which was 9,881. Next slide, please. SLO County remains in the purple tier with an average of 22.8 cases per day per 100,000 population and a positivity rate of 4%. The testing site at the fairgrounds is now open 5 days a week instead of only 3. They are now open Tuesday through Saturday and located off Riverside Drive there. Next slide, please. San Luis Obispo County currently has a total case count of 6,311. That's an increase of 1,061 total cases since my last report. Of those 6,311, there are 38 fatalities and 5,381 recovered, giving a total active case count of 892, which is an increase of 179 new active cases since my last report. Next slide, please. The Paso Robles zip code area continues to lead the county in total cases. In the last report, I identified that 1,268 cases were in the Paso Robles region. As of today, there are 1,534, an increase of 266 cases, or an average of 19 new cases in our region per day. Next slide, please. The state has already begun to implement limited stay-at-home orders for all counties in the purple tier, and the governor announced yesterday that if these trends continue, the state may take drastic actions. These actions include a potential stay-at-home order for those regions with high hospitalization rates. Next slide, please. The state has received notice that they will receive approximately 327,000 vaccines in mid-December. Each person has to receive 2 doses, so these vaccines will only be administered to approximately 163,000 people. There's been discussion that the vaccine's priority will go towards healthcare workers and first responders, but that has not been finalized. Other essential workers and the most vulnerable populations in California, such as those living in high-risk facilities like nursing homes, are thought to be the next to receive the vaccine. San Luis Obispo County Public Health Department is creating a local stakeholders group to help prioritize distribution when the vaccines become available to the general public. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Johnson-Rios.
Thank you, Chief Stornetta. I'll provide a brief update on some state and city response efforts. First, I'll highlight some enhanced state assistance for small businesses that the governor announced this week. There are a number of programs available, including a 3-month income tax deferral for businesses with less than $1 million in sales tax, and interest fee payment agreements for businesses with up to $5 million in sales tax revenues. In addition, the California Rebuilding Fund is a public-private partnership that's aggregating funding from public, philanthropic, and private sectors to provide low-interest loans and assistance to small businesses. And there's a new grant program that the state is just establishing, which will provide $500 million in grants for small businesses. The California Office of the Small Business Advocate is the entity that's working to establish the program as quickly as possible. And folks can sign up for updates on that program at covid19.ca.gov. We also have more information about a variety of business resources on the city's website at prcity.com/coronavirus. Next slide, please. And residential assistance continues as the second wave of the pandemic is hitting. We know that many residents are still in need of assistance from a variety of these sources. Unfortunately, some of these are set to potentially expire in the coming months unless additional legislative action is taken. For example, it's unclear whether eviction protections will be extended beyond February. So we continue to monitor all of these and we'll keep the public apprised of any changes through our city website and our COVID-19 email updates. One thing to highlight this week is that food insecurity has increased by 154% in SLO County since the pandemic began. And the SLO County Food Bank is currently feeding 74,000 people each month. 35 to 40% are children under the age of 18. A list of food distribution sites and other helpful information can be found also on the city's website at prcity.com/coronavirus. Next slide, please. So in terms of city services during the pandemic, we have a fun one this Saturday. The police department and the Recreation Services Division have teamed up to create a safe way for our youngest residents to enjoy the holiday season. The Super Stocking Drive-Through giveaway will be happening on December 5th from 12 to 2 at Centennial Park while supplies last. And they'll be distributing stockings filled with goodies in a socially distant free drive-through event. Next slide, please. The library recently received a $3,500 fall lunch at the library grant from the California State Library, and this has allowed the library to purchase over 2,000 STEM and craft kits as well as 500 books. They've bundled all those together and created 1,500 grab-and-go bags, which are being distributed via the school district's Meaningful Meal Sites, the Oak Park Housing Authority Housing Development, and a variety of other community organizations. Next slide, please. The city and county are continuing to look for ways to slow the spread of COVID-19. In addition to comprehensive communications plans, recently the city has helped facilitate the distribution of 1,700 COVID prevention kits countywide and is working with the county on in-person COVID prevention education in English, Spanish, and Mixteco. The Mayor's COVID Coalition also continues, and that facilitated 144 radio spots that ran on three radio stations throughout October. There was no charge to the city for those spots as they were donated by American General Media. And also, we'd like to make sure that residents know that tomorrow afternoon there will be a pop-up testing site from 2 to 5 at the Library Study Center at 36th and Oak. That's right near the Uptown Family Park, and that will be free. The county is trying to do increasing numbers of these pop-up sites around various locations in our city and in the county. So if you are available tomorrow afternoon or know anyone who needs to get tested, that's another location that's available. Next slide, please. More good news on the testing front. The permanent site, which continues to be at the event center, has been expanded from 3 days to 5 days. So that's now available also for free from Tuesday through Saturday each week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I know that the appointments were booked leading into the Thanksgiving holiday, and the county's been able to expand testing in Paso as well as at other locations in the county. So if you tried to get a test recently and you still would like to get one this week, check out emergencyslow.org, which is where you can register for appointments at the Paso site or any other site. And as always, please follow the public health guidelines above to help slow the spread. This is particularly important now, given the situational update that Chief Stornetta outlined for us. And that concludes our presentation tonight, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. This is a presentation. No action is required. We'll ask for council comments and then see if anybody in the community would like to comment. First with Councilman Gregory.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond?
Yeah, one for Sarah. I'm kind of online looking at our website on the city. You said prcity.com/COVID didn't come up for the business assistance or federal grant money and all that. Maybe I just don't have the website. Do you have that again, Sarah?
Yes, it is prcity.com/coronavirus. And then there is there's a series of tiles on that screen, and there's a tile called Business Resources.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Strong?
No questions, thank you.
And Councilwoman Garcia?
No questions, sir. I just want to make a comment just to the staff and everyone that's doing such great work for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to make a couple of comments also, and I'm sure all the rest of the council have received the same type of comments via telephone and email that I have. And obviously in this time, we've in some areas have become quite divided. And on the issue of COVID compliance, I get emails on one side of the issue that says the city's being too harsh. And on the other side of the issue, the city's not being strong enough and requiring COVID compliance. And I just wanted to go over some of the things that we have done. This is not a comprehensive list, and also to sort of state our attitude on how we've addressed this to date. We've chosen to educate and empathize before we enforce. We are working to be in complete compliance with state mandates within our capacity to do that. And what I mean by that is we don't have unlimited law enforcement. We don't have unlimited city staff to check every business and every public outing in the city and to be stringent enforcers of COVID mandates. We do trust our citizens to be intelligent, to be self-reliant, and to use common sense when it comes to the strategies necessary to head off this infection. And since the beginning, that message has been very clear. Face masks, hand washing, and social distancing. In fact, some medical experts say if we all just did that, that would be as effective as a vaccine. So regardless of your political position, regardless of your position regarding the science of the issue, regardless of any of that, if we can do those three things, we can make significant strides toward getting out of the purple zone and back into the red and even further so our businesses can continue to open. We've facilitated federal monies coming through the city to our local businesses. We've issued small business grants of $200,000. We've assisted with grant funds in the tens of thousands of dollars in helping keeping our restaurants open and getting them out into the streets so they can continue to serve meals. Also, we've allowed for dining in the city park. We've partnered with our Chamber of Commerce to handle counseling services with businesses so they're educated and know what they are required to do during the pandemic. We've also worked with our travel parcel folks to make sure that we are not importing any sort of infections from other areas. And in fact, if you look at the statistics from County Public Health, the great majority of infections in our area come from social gatherings, come from community spread, and very few come from people who are visiting from outside of the area. Likewise, we work with our wine people and with our Main Street folks to help educate and counsel businesses in the appropriate way to operate during the pandemic. We are going to continue to comply within our capacity. We are not going to go rogue. We are not going to tell the state to go pound sand. We are going to be responsible adults, as we always are in the city of Paso Robles. We're going to take it upon ourselves to act as adults, to protect ourselves and our neighbors, to keep our community physically and fiscally fit. So I would urge all of our citizens, please wear a mask, wash your hands, and socially distance. And with that, I don't see anybody lined up to make a comment on this issue. Do we have anyone that would like to speak?
No, sir.
No, sir.
We will move on to general public comments. General public comments consist of a time when people are allowed to make comments of up to 3 minutes on issues within the purview of the Paso Robles City Council. We ask as you come online, you state your name so we and everyone listening in know who is speaking. And we will start off with the first person that I have on my list right now, and that would be Yesenia Echeverria. Yesenia, are you with us tonight?
I am here.
Welcome, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just wanted to share also with you guys that my name is Yesenia Echeverria. I am the founder of Mujeres de Éxito, Women of Success. We have officially changed our name today to Women of Action, Mujeres de Acción. We are a local organization here in the community of Paso Robles, and we've been first responders during COVID. And we've been in the trenches and seeing the need firsthand. I had called months back in regards to COVID and how it's impacting Hispanic families directly here in Paso Robles. And I just feel like there is still a huge disconnect when it comes to the work that is happening. And I think we can all admit that we could do so much more. And when I look at the numbers of cases in Paso Robles, it still doesn't sit well with me that we're still leading. That's nothing to be proud of. And I'm hearing people being sworn in tonight, and I'm hearing, we have to put in the forefront the safety of our town. And I'm asking you guys the question, are we really doing that? I'm seeing, downtown being full of tourists, and I'm also hearing the echoing of, okay, the outsiders don't bring COVID to our town, but what's happening to Paso? I appreciate the wonderful work that we are getting more testing happening. I would also like to ask to have testing happen on the other end of town over by La Mexicana, where Singer Sancho's is at. I think a pop-up station there would be nice. I also appreciate the work of Shauna Howenstein, who has been in great communication with myself. And we've been working together to give information in Spanish, and she's been communicating greatly. Also, Mayor Martin, thank you for reaching out and following up with me. I greatly appreciate that. And so there is still need. There is still a reality that we still can do more. Part of my job as a community coordinator the community is I'm not so much speaking as I'm more speaking on behalf of the community and on behalf of the businesses and on behalf of all of these concerns that people trickle into me. And there are concerns that businesses are not following the COVID regulations. And I can't help but to wonder, are they not following the regulations because they're not in a good economic place, that they're fearful that they're not going to make their ends meet? And if that's the case, then the city needs to do more to support. And I'm hearing that, the filing of grants and more support to them. And, that's wonderful. And I would like to see that also being supported to other businesses outside of the downtown area. There's just more need to do more. As the holiday season has already begun, we're seeing more interaction. And I think the key part that we can take from is the gatherings that are happening in our area. What is happening with the gatherings? That's a big point of interest and concern for a lot of citizens. And it seems a bit like they've taken a relaxed stance, that people can gather and there's no sort of even a slap on the wrist or on the hand. And that is very bothersome, especially when I'm seeing in community members are seeing full-on parties happening.
That's 3 minutes, ma'am. Can you summarize?
I feel like we have the information. We're in a good place. I hope you guys continue to have the information in Spanish. And I know our Spanish COVID group is doing the work as well on a free sense. And we got the information. We're getting people tested, but now we need action. And I hope that tonight there can be some resolution to be truthful, to say, hey, we can do more. I'm very concerned, and so are so many other people are concerned moving forward, that COVID is only going to get worse.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Next up, we have Carmen, and I apologize, Carmen, is it Bukeen?
Yes. Yeah.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
I can, and you are on.
Hello, my name is Carmen Boquin, and I'm a Paso resident and a member of Paso People's Action, which is like a grassroots group of locals in Paso Robles that are working towards a world in Paso where everyone can thrive, and that like living in a world in Paso Robles that doesn't face houselessness or face a lot of the problems that we're going through right now with the COVID pandemic, and then also as well as like being one of the most expensive places to live in California per capita. So looking at that right now, like want to echo a lot of what Yesenia just said, is just like working harder to respond to the pandemic. And really, and I know y'all have been like giving relief, but also like we need the city to step up a little bit more and give a little bit more guidance to our people. And like, I understand that like it's up to us and the people to do that, but we also need a little bit more government regulation as well. And then another thing is that we're seeing during this time that so many people are being forgotten, and specifically Black, Indigenous people of color. They're the most at risk for the pandemic. There are frontline workers. Our Latinx population is being hit hardest in Paso Robles and in the county. And so we're having to see that like our orgs like us have to step up. And so right now we're doing a 12 days of giving, where we highlight different orgs around the county for each day. And Paso People's Action is going to be highlighted, and Mujeres de Acción is going to be highlighted on December 8th and 9th, collecting materials and sanitation supplies to distribute to undocumented farm workers. and as well as diapers and baby stuff to give to new moms in Paso Robles and North County who are at risk and cannot afford that. And so those are two things that we're doing right now to respond to the pandemic and just like respond to communities that have been forgotten in Paso Robles and in North County. And so we would appreciate if, of course, the county could step up and offer more affordable housing, offer more resources for us to be able to thrive and live together. But other than that, that's how we're responding to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it. I see no one else on the list for general public comments, so we'll close general public comments. I think it's worth taking the time to go over a couple of these COVID points because obviously we've been going at it a long time now. People are getting very fatigued, and we are all restless to see that vaccine start hitting the streets so we can kind of take a deep breath and move on. But I'd like to ask a couple of questions here based on comments made by our visitors telephonically. There is an obvious concern and a legitimate concern about the source of infection, particularly in the 93446 area code, because we have, since the beginning of this pandemic, led the rest of the county in infections. And one of the concerns was that because we're a high tourism area, that would be one of the driving factors. Now, I've had conversations with the county public health officer, and they will not give us explicit sourcing on infections. There are privacy issues. But we are told in general in the aggregate reports that tourism is not a high source of infection. Chief Stornetta, have you heard anything different from that?
No, that is not a high source of transmission.
So that would say to me that, first of all, our tourism organizations are being responsible in the way they market this place during the pandemic. And the businesses that are catering to tourists, restaurants, hotels, et cetera, are going the extra mile to make sure that they are prepared and handle the likelihood of infection effectively. So I just want to, I'm quoting the sources, I'm quoting the scientific sources as far as what the genesis of infection is in our area. There was a question about establishing more testing pop-ups in the city of Paso Robles. I would think that everybody would like to see that. The city doesn't do that. Who's in charge of establishing pop-up testing facilities?
Mayor Martin, the county establishes the pop-up testing facilities, but they have reached out to us. We provided several potential locations in all areas of the city, and so we will continue working with them to implement additional pop-ups as they have resources available. They work with the state to contract for testing in various ways.
Do we have any idea of the distribution of pop-up testing sites across the county? Is this being done equitably across all zip codes, or is this something that's been focused in specific areas? How's that working?
I think it's honestly evolved over time, but they have certainly looked at equity across the county. They have looked at primarily the way that it's broken down on the county's website. So in some cases that is by city if the zip code borders align well with the city, and we know in our case they're using the zip code area for the greater Paso area, so they're trying to make sure that they have testing in all of those areas. Another factor though is utilization. So in the beginning when they had testing sites in Paso, they weren't always heavily utilized, and so that was a factor. They needed to make sure that they were getting as many tests countywide as possible, since now that is a portion of what goes into our tier system. But it is really good news that the Paso permanent site at this point was expanded to 5 days, and we are still one of the only sites, if not the only site, to have Saturday testing. So that stability is something that we were working towards, so that residents would have a reliable and consistent location where they could go. And we'll continue to work for pop-up sites in addition to the permanent site.
Thank you. And then a couple of questions about enforcement for businesses not complying with COVID guidelines and for social gatherings which are discouraged by the state's health mandates. perhaps the police chief could comment on the enforcement process in those areas.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. So we continue to work with the county. In fact, we were working on some information today. We share information back and forth regarding complaints that are common to the county and to the city. The city has recently sent out some letters that we're aware of, advising that county code enforcement would also be conducting local inspections as they receive what they're calling serious complaints. As far as enforcement action goes, as we've discussed at our last city council meeting, council gave the police department direction that we would focus our attention on mostly on education, working with groups such as the chamber to reach out to businesses that might be in violation or that we get reports of, but saving any type of enforcement action to the most egregious. At this point, we've identified egregious as those violating quarantine orders or those knowingly that might be working while sick or those type of activities absent further direction. Our enforcement mechanisms at this point appear to be involving administrative citations to enforce our local ordinance, which reinforces county and state orders.
What's been the response to those efforts? Obviously, people who are calling us tonight feel that there is a high level of non-compliance. Has that been your observation?
There's been various levels of compliance. I think that it's been well aware with the most recent orders issued by the state regarding moving us back into the purple tier and the restrictions on curfew or the limited stay-at-home orders, that there are people that are being vocal about their displeasure with that. But when the police department and others have gone out to educate folks, we've been warmly received, and we have not observed anybody that is willfully trying to break these rules. However, it is a source of political disagreement, so to speak, with many of the rules. And of course, it's very challenging for the police department in those respects when we're talking about the various opinions about science and enforceability and constitutionality. And absent further direction from the council, we've followed the orders, continuing to educate the community and seek compliance wherever possible.
Thank you. And then I've been advising people who observe non-compliance that they can email a complaint to code@prcity.com. Is that still active?
Yes, you can call the police department at 237-6464 and get a live person to dispatch. You can go to readyslow.org, get the county's feedback number there, or you can contact our code enforcement directly, leave them a voicemail message or send them an email. If you'd like, you can also go to the police department's website, and we have online reporting as well there.
Thank you. And I suppose one other component of self-responsibility is if you feel particularly threatened by a situation, my advice would be don't expose yourself to that situation, and you might by telephone explain to the proprietor why you have not participated in that business, because they depend on you, the customers, and they want to maintain that goodwill. Okay, we're moving on now. I'll ask the yes.
Just Ham, I would like to make a comment that I don't think we really had the opportunity to do this, but I want to make a statement, basically fully support Chief Lewis and his department policy on handling COVID. And I think it's a good way of trying to get us through a very trying time and also trying to keep our economy going, but yet keeping people safe. So I just want to say again, I'm fully supportive of Ty.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Gregory?
I would agree with Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I'm fully supportive of what Ty is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strong.
And that makes three of us.
Ms. Garcia.
Yes, sir. I just also want to say thank you to the two ladies that called in, Yesenia and Ms. Boquin, for being out there and giving back to the community. I really appreciate all the efforts that everyone's making. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that as well. We've had conversations in the past, and they've been involved with the COVID coalition, so they are definitely, putting their efforts where their words are, and that's a good sign. We move on now to our consent calendar, but before doing that, I'll ask the city manager if we have any items to be deferred tonight.
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Our consent calendar consists of items that we don't think require separate discussion. However, if discussion is wanted by a member of the council or public, the item may be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Council members and members of the public may offer comments or ask questions of clarification without removing an item from the calendar. Individual items are approved by the vote that approves the consent calendar unless an item is pulled for separate consideration. Items pulled from consent are usually heard at the end of the meeting. With that, I will go down the list of city council members asking for comments or questions, brief comments or questions on items on the consent calendar. And if you have one you want to have pulled, please indicate so at that time. Mr. Gregory?
I'd like to just have item 11 reviewed so everybody understands it.
Okay, so item 11 is, okay, modifications to health benefit contributions for elected officials. Let's pull that one. Anything else?
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a question on item 15. That's the approval purchase of transit buses and vans.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought these, when we turned over to RTA, that we did not have to buy vehicles anymore, but maybe staff can elaborate.
Mr. Cornell, your name's on this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hammond, what happened was we had received Proposition 1B funds from the states prior to the consolidation of RTA. For whatever reason, those funds never made its way down to RTA for the purchase of buses. So this action is actually doing is that formal authorization to move the funds to RTA so that they could purchase, based on their procurement policies, the buses listed in the staff report.
I see. So these are leftover grant funds, basically, that we're going to transfer to their agency for use. So thank you.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Strong.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to pull item number 11 to continue it for reasons.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's fine.
Very good. Item number 11.
That's fine, and I'll talk to it later.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Garcia?
No, sir, nothing.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any names of the public to comment. Open public comment. Do we have anybody that I'm not seeing here, city staff?
No, sir.
Very good. I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council, entertain a motion for the balance of the consent calendar.
I'd like to make a motion for the consent calendar. Items 4 through 10 and 12 through 20. Move that we approve the consent calendar for those numbers.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Hammond. Any further discussion, Councilman Gregory?
No, thank you.
Councilman Hammond?
None, thank you.
Councilman Strong?
No, sir.
Councilwoman Garcia?
No, sir.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Pardon me. Did it come through? Aye.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat that?
Yes, I was having trouble with my mute. Aye.
Thank you. And Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We do have people lined up for public comment on our next issue, so I'm going to take item number 11 and put it at the end of the agenda. We'll deal with that then. Before we move on, I'll ask the city manager to give a short report of the items we've acted on as the consent calendar, so people listening in will understand what we've done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council tonight on its consent calendar approves city council minutes, approve the warrant register, which is the checks that the city writes for the goods and services it receives. The total this time was $2.9 million, of which $575,000 was general fund, $510,000 was wastewater fund, $450,000 was capital improvements fund for the Dry Creek Road improvements, and $415,000 was from the water fund. The council also approved the receipt of an ABC grant, that's an alcohol and beverage control grant, to assist the police department in combating underage drinking. The council approved a 2-year contract with Martinelli Landscaping for landscaping, maintenance of the landscaping lighting district area 1, other areas to follow in subsequent meetings. The council approved a contract for the GSA, that's the Groundwater Services Agency's second annual basin report, and that the total is $80,000, but since we're the lead agency, we will be paying only our portion. It will be reimbursed for all other parts of that. The council approved amending contracts with DTA, which used to be David Taussig and Associates, as well as Colantuno law firm, and that's for work that's done on specific planned projects and other projects where the developer reimburses the city. So those are at no cost to the city. As discussed, the council approved the transfer of Prop 1B funds to RTA to purchase transit vehicles. The council received treasurer's reports for the months of July, August, and September, and those are Mike Compton's last reports as treasurer. The council approved a 6-month lease extension for 625 Riverside, and at the same rate as we've been paying before, and that will allow the transfer of city functions currently housed at 625 Riverside to the new location on Second Windway at the airport. The council approved the acquisition of the Boots property, and that's necessary for the replacement of an expensive to operate wastewater lift station by a gravity main. So that's good news for the ratepayers. The council approved agreements for the collection and distribution to the city of funds to be paid by people on Measure J20. So those agreements are necessary in order for that to take place. And finally, the council approved the second reading and adoption of the sewer use ordinance modifications, which relaxes some discharge requirements and other upgrades to our sewage ordinance. Mr. Mayor, those are all the items the council approved on consent.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we go to public hearings. Item number 21, approval of 2020 general plan housing element adoption with implementing zoning ordinance amendments and identification and allocation of Cycle 2 surplus density units.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Warren Frace, Community Development Director. I'm just going to make a couple brief introductions here. So we've been working on this for the last year. Our staff team has been led by Darcy Delgado. She's been working closely with our consultants as well as the Housing Constraints and Opportunity Committee. So I'll turn it over to Darcy to take it from here.
Thank you. So yes, as Lauren mentioned, for about a year now, we've been working on the housing element update. So it's really exciting that we're finally presenting to the council tonight. A lot of work has been put into the effort, and we truly couldn't have done this without our consultant, and that is Genevieve Shera with MIG. Genevieve has been wonderful to work with and has helped make this process seamless. So tonight's presentation to the council is actually going to be given by Genevieve. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren and Darcy, and good evening, City Council and Mayor. Tonight, I would like to give you just a brief overview of the housing element update, including the public participation that helped form the document and some of the more notable components of the document. The housing element is a state-required element of the general plan, but it's a little unique in that it's the only general plan element that requires a really extensive review and certification process by a state agency called the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is often referred to as HCD. And we'll try and keep the planning jargon and acronyms to the minimum, but there will be a couple in here, including the next one. A large part of the housing element is linked to what's called the RHNA, or the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So that is actually a target of housing development that each city in the state has to show that can be accommodated with existing zoning and land use policy. The housing element's really driven by a statewide legislative intent that the availability of housing is of vital statewide importance, and that local and state governments have a responsibility to facilitate the improvement and development of housing to address the needs of all income segments of the community. It's also the only element of the general plan that has a state legislated schedule for updates. This current update is an 8-year cycle, and it is due December 31st for this region. And so that due date means that it needs to be adopted by that date. If it's adopted on time, the housing element remains valid for the 8-year period. If that adoption deadline is missed, there's a penalty of a 4-year update being required. The housing element, as Darcy mentioned, was built on a really strong public participation program, beginning with a community workshop back in January, where participants discussed the key challenges and opportunities for housing in Paso Robles. Participants focused on the need to find creative solutions for financing and really ways to facilitate more housing, including clarity in regulations and process streamlining. After the community workshop, the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee was reconvened, and this group has really been instrumental in developing the draft housing element. At their first meeting, they also discussed issues and opportunities, and the group really stressed the need to be both realistic and creative with coming up with solutions for housing in Paso Robles, and really a focus on providing incentives for housing production. The group also discussed ways to meet the RHNA, that housing target for the community, including looking at projects in the pipeline as well as potential sites around town. Sites that would score well for affordable housing financing were prioritized by the group. The group also discussed best practices and case studies and made recommendations, and reviewed draft policies and programs that would be included directly into the draft housing element. They also met and discussed preliminary early action implementation items that are included in this draft housing element before you tonight. And these are largely edits to the zoning ordinance, as well as a potential work plan for the next year for additional housing incentives. In August, the City Council and Planning Commission, you'll recall, met for a joint study session to review the draft housing element and approve staff submitting it to HCD for their review. They have 60 days to review the draft, and we discussed it with HCD, made some very minor changes for clarity and to best address constraints to housing production. So those changes are included in the draft before you tonight. And with these changes, HCD determined that the housing element meets the requirements of state housing law. So upon adoption, would be in compliance, which is a great achievement. The city also received a few public comment letters on the draft housing element. The first 5 San Luis Obispo County group submitted a letter on October 5th pertaining to childcare needs in the county. The housing element does include a policy to integrate childcare needs into the planning process. HCD submitted their letter of compliance to the city on October 8th, indicating that the housing element fully complied with state law. The California Rural Legal Assistance Group also submitted a letter to HCD directly and then copied the city on October 8th. This same letter was forwarded to the council and is included in an addendum to your packet tonight. And this letter identified multiple recommendations to comply with state housing element law as well. However, on the same day, HCD had determined that the draft housing element was in compliance with state housing element law. In late October, SLOCOGS, San Luis Obispo County Council of Governments, one less acronym, submitted a letter commending Paso Robles' housing element. And one additional letter was received pertaining to the CEQA mitigated negative declaration. And that was from the California Department of Toxic Substances Control. And the letter indicated some certain requirements for toxic and hazardous material removal during the physical development of properties. Planning Commission met on November 10th and recommended approval of the housing element and all related items. So I'd like to give a very brief overview of what the draft document actually is. And it's really, the intent is to be a comprehensive statement by the community of its current and future housing needs. And it identifies actions to really facilitate the provision of additional housing to meet those needs. So the first chapter is the introduction, and then the second chapter really is the heart, the circle in the center of the screen. That is the heart of the document, and this is where the goals, the policies, and those implementing programs, these are action items, are included. Chapter 3 is the regional chapter, and this is unique to San Luis Obispo County, and it is the same chapter in each housing element for every jurisdiction in the county, really looking at what the regional vision is for housing and collaboration. Chapter 4 is the needs assessment, which reviews demographic and housing trends. Chapter 5 is the constraints to housing production review, and this looks at governmental constraints, potentially with zoning ordinance particularities and approval processes. It also looks at non-governmental market constraints and environmental constraints as well. Chapter 6 looks at the resources and sites inventory. This is where we show how the city can meet that regional housing need allocation, that housing target, and how it can be accommodated. And finally, Chapter 7 reviews the past accomplishments from the previous housing element that runs through 2020 to show how those accomplishments have been achieved. Chapter 2 is the heart of the plan, so I just wanted to review some of the more notable action items that are included in this chapter. The first is a program to maintain adequate sites to meet the housing targets throughout the 8-year period. It's important to note that the city can accommodate that housing target with current zoning regulations. Program number 15 included a variety of zoning ordinance amendments that are meant to really remove barriers to multifamily residential development, including regulating the maximum building height in feet rather than requiring not only a maximum in feet, but also in the number of stories, really just to provide a little bit more flexibility, but the maximum building height would remain the same. This program also includes the increase in the threshold for projects to provide a community room. So right now, projects of 32 units or more would require that. That was increased to 40 units to better align with the tax credit requirements and determinations about where economies of scale actually do occur in projects. And also making sure that the zoning ordinance complies with state law with regard to manufactured housing. This program number 16, will clear up inconsistencies in the zoning ordinance that prevent this one parcel from developing at the densities matching its R3 zoning designation. The zoning ordinance requires a development plan for 5 or more dwelling units per lot currently, and this zoning ordinance amendment would revise that threshold to more than 10 units, really to just facilitate a streamlined review. Another measure that was brought forward by the HTOC was the introduction of fractional density units. So this process mirrors a methodology that San Luis Obispo uses, and the program's really intended to encourage smaller unit sizes and thus more affordability by design, assuming smaller units are a fraction of a density unit. So these fractional density units will apply only in new multifamily units, in multifamily residential zones, the uptown town center zones where multifamily uses are allowed, and in the mixed use overlay zone. So as a result of the fractional density units projected to be constructed, there's a resulting additional surplus units for allocation per the general plan. So the land use element identifies the number of potential new units in various areas in Paso Robles. Because a portion of new multifamily units would be small and thus less than one density unit, there will be a resulting 345 new surplus units in the city. A portion of these 345 surplus density units are proposed to be allocated to the vacant commercial pads in the Woodland Center, which is linked to the next program. Program 6. One of the topics of discussion with HCOC was potential areas around town that could be re-examined that do not currently allow for residential, but are really ripe for redevelopment and could really benefit from housing in relation to adjacent services, uses. And the group discussed and recommended that the mixed use overlay, first of all, be modified to provide some more flexibility and make it a more usable tool for developers, and increase the density to encourage development and support the types of housing that are really in demand. In addition, it was recommended that the mixed use overlay be applied to 2 sites. These are both at Woodland Plaza, and were identified by the HCOC as really good locations to support housing, in that they're located really close to existing services. They're underutilized infill pads that are kind of on the edge, that haven't developed as they kind of thought they would. And because of their location, they would score well for affordable housing competitive funding. So this rezoning is included with this housing element to move forward this policy quickly. And the city has received applications for projects on both of these sites, including an affordable housing development project on the site identified here as MU2. So of the available 345 new surplus units, 79 units would be allocated for the Affordable Housing Senior Project at MU2, and 20 units would be allocated for MU1 on the map here. That's the vacant pad along Niblick Road adjacent to the Highlands Church. In addition to those notable programs that also have concurrent zoning amendments, there are a few new programs that resulted from HCD discussions during their review of the draft housing element. So these programs were not programs that you would have seen back in August when we had that joint study session. The first that they recommended is to review the city's parking standards for studios and 1-bedrooms on the east side, to ensure that these parking standards are not posing an undue constraint on new housing development. So this new program was added to the housing element. HCD also noticed that the city should review and potentially modify the findings for development plan approvals with the real intent to comply with the Housing Accountability Act and to remove any subjectivity from those findings. HCD also encouraged additional community engagement strategies throughout the life of the plan through a variety of methods, which have been added to the housing element. And they also noted the need to review the definition of family in the zoning ordinance to make sure that it is inclusive and non-discriminatory. HCD also recommended a few modifications to existing programs, including to continue to convene the HCOC as part of the increased engagement strategies, to continue and to increase efforts to affirmatively further fair housing, and annually monitor the effectiveness of some of the housing programs. So as Darcy said, we're excited to be nearing the end of this project. It incorporated extensive public input and is reaching the end of the process here before City Council for your consideration. There are a few steps beyond tonight as well. HCD does require a review of the adopted housing element. They get 90 days to review that, and the intent of this review is to really make sure that all of our conversations about the changes that we would make to the draft were incorporated, and that the draft substantially matches what we agreed upon through our consultation with HCD. The HCOC, as I mentioned, did identify some items to work on in 2021. The city has secured funding through 3 different grant sources, SB2, LEAP, and is applying for the REAP grant this month, which will support future housing element implementation, including potentially moving forward with the comprehensive zoning ordinance cleanup to really facilitate clarity in the development process for staff and the public and developers. And also a note that was brought up by HCOC to consider the boundaries of the Uptown plan to make sure that properties that are just outside of the Uptown Town Center plan that may be very similar to those properties within the plan may be included within the plan to apply consistent development policies. That concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Thank you very much for that report. As always, we'll go to the council for questions, then to the community for comments, and then back to the council for discussion. So council questions, Mr. Gregory.
I think I'm going to withhold any questions at this time. I'll wait for comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, very well done. It's a long time, a lot of work to come up with this housing element. I'm glad we got it done in time. Where does it go from here? In other words, the next step obviously is to adopt it and then have it sent in for review and acceptance.
That is correct. After adoption, we'll send the signed resolution along with the draft or the adopted housing element up to HCD for their review. They do have 90 days to take a look at it, make sure it's consistent with what we agreed upon. But moving forward, we are under the presumption of compliance with state law, given the draft letter that was sent by HCD.
And so we're good at that point for another 8 years, unless we want to, for some reason, delve back into it. We have that option.
Correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Strong.
My mute button is not working right. I'm sorry. No, actually, I know that we are in process of working through the REAP application, and I was wondering if anyone there can tell us if how far we've gotten on that. Anyone?
So was that regarding the REAP application?
Yes, the REAP allocation for Paso Robles, which I know
yes.
that we've applied for, but I don't know where we are in the processing at this point.
Sure. So this is Darcy Delgado. I'd be happy to update the council on that status. So staff is currently working on the application. It's due December 9th. Several weeks ago, we had brought the resolution authorizing council to for staff to move forward with applying for the grant money. That went through, so we'll submit that with the application. And then, as Genevieve had noted in the presentation, what we're applying for is for money to be applied to a comprehensive update to the zoning code, as well as possibly updating the Uptown Town Center specific plan with those grant monies. So we can probably provide the council an update later in the month or early January on the status of that once we submit the application.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Garcia?
Yes. Darcy, so this is our general plan build out, and I just heard you say it's for the 8 years. But don't we get different standards every year, or how does that work? There's different housing element standards every year.
This is Genevieve. I'm happy to answer that question. So the housing element has a different schedule than any other component. And so it does have an 8-year cycle. So we won't get another allocation of a housing target until we're getting close to the end of this cycle. So we'll go through the update process, probably in the year leading up to, so probably in 2027. So the Department of Finance gives annual updates about the number of housing units that are actually constructed. The city submits a housing element annual report every year that tracks the production of housing, but the actual allocation of a projection only happens once every 8 years.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now go to public comment. From the public, I have several people in line waiting to comment. First on my list is Dale Guston. Dale, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
We can, Dale. You're on.
Okay. Dale Guston, 945 Spring Street. I did read the element. It's quite voluminous. And of course, the Planning Commission dealt with it and passed it on to you. My concern is that in trying to provide increased low-income housing, we're developing high density. And of course, high density increases congestion, and it contributes to poor air quality. Now, those I think we're dealing with fairly well. But the one other thing that concerns me is, as a part of that criteria set forth, was to maintain the quality of our housing. I feel that just before COVID hit, that the City Council, in allowing so many vacation rentals in R1, has reduced the quality of our R1 housing. And I wish the city would revisit that after COVID and not have so much vacation rentals in R1. I think that's hurting the quality of our housing. That's my comment.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Up next, we have Lori Doyle. Lori, are you with us?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mayor and council members and city staff. My name is Lori Doyle. I'm with Affordable Housing Development Corporation, and I am a co-developer of one of the properties that was mentioned in the housing element update, located in the Woodland Shopping Center. I just wanted to comment that we are excited to partner with the Paso Robles Housing Authority and the City of Paso Robles once again on another low-income housing development to provide affordable housing to the citizens of Paso Robles. I want to commend the city for their focus on affordable housing sites during their housing element update that specifically met local and state funding requirements. That is very much appreciated in our competitive funding world that we are in these days. Developing this property at the Woodland Shopping Center is going to not only repurpose the current zoning and help revitalize the center that is currently, in our minds, an underutilized site. Again, I just want to thank you for being so proactive in providing housing opportunities to your much deserving citizens of the city of Paso Robles and the county of San Luis Obispo. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Vince Vanderlip. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Vince Vanderlip, 323 15th Street. I currently sit on the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee. But first and foremost, a big congratulations to Councilman Gregory and Councilman Strong. Thank you again for your continued service to both of you, and it's great to see you back. As far as the housing element is concerned, I would first like to just thank the consultant, Genevieve, and city staff. They truly helped tremendously in summarizing and presenting all the new housing element information to the committee in an understandable and workable fashion. So thank you for that. Secondly, and most importantly, I'd like to also thank each of the members of the City Council, and especially the City Manager, Mr. Fucci, for your continued support, once again, of committees such as the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee. Private industry experts working together with city staff truly allows committees such as these to see potential problems from both sides and come up with real life solutions. The result being a document that's more sensitive to the community's needs and a much greater chance of successful implementation. So thank you very much to everyone there. I know the city in the past has been very, excuse me?
Go ahead.
Everything okay?
We're good.
I know the city in the past has been very successful in reaching its goals in previous housing elements, and I'm hopeful because of the work done by the HCOC that continues to be the case. Going forward with that, I will echo a comment Mr. Fucci once made at a conclusion of one of our HCOC meetings with a bit of a twist of my own. The challenge is not only to provide a compliant housing element for both the state and the city, but one that successfully leads to an adequate housing supply across all levels of all economic levels, especially and very importantly, those levels of workforce and affordable housing. So thank you to everyone's work on that. I think it's a very good document. Thank you again.
Thanks for your comments.
You bet.
Next, we have David Cook. David, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and then Councilman and Councilwoman. My name's Dave Cook. I'm the Executive Director for the Paso Robles Housing Authority. And I also was privileged to sit on the HCOC committee going through this housing element thing. It was very informative and enlightening, and it was very creative for all of us. And I'd like to thank MIG and Genevieve and city staff. Working with them, they did an outstanding job of putting this 240-page document together, and I think it's one that the city can be very proud of. It's very creative, and it should serve the city of Paso Robles and its residents for the next years. We put a lot of elements in there that I think it's going to be good for the developers and good for the citizens of all incomes throughout Paso Robles. And it's what's allowed us to do, and it's a privilege working you've heard from Lori Doyle, who is the Executive Director of Affordable Housing Development Corporation. So we're working through the process, and this particular project, this housing element is very timing because we are looking at a 79-unit senior affordability project, as Lori said, on the vacant parcel next to J.C. Penney building in the Woodland Shopping Center. The implementation of the housing element is allowing this project to be purposed from commercial zone to mixed use, which allows this residential property to go. So the timing has been very, very, very good for us. And we're looking, going to the Planning Commission here soon and City Council here sometime in January. So we're working our way through the planning and entitlement process. And we are planning on trying to submit an application to the Tax Credit Committee on March of 2021. So the city's been very good to work with, and we're kind of on a fast track to get there. And this housing element was a big part of it. So again, we're very excited about bringing some more affordable housing units, in particular seniors. We think, because I think Jennifer said earlier, because of the location, the shopping, the banking, the transportation, a lot of these things should be a good project for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I have no one else on my list as a speaker tonight. I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. We do have a couple of questions and comments we probably should get some input on. One caller questioned the impact of higher density development to achieve low-income housing on traffic congestion and air quality. Perhaps Mr. Frace could comment on that.
Yeah, real quickly, we've done a lot of analysis on traffic with our circulation element update recently, And high-density housing actually has a lower traffic generation factor per unit than single family. So if we're going to build units, actually we'll get less traffic per unit out of higher density, plus it has the benefit of being more affordable. So those are, kind of some of the balancing acts that we take into consideration with any planning or general plan effort. There's also a question about the impact of short-term rentals on R1 neighborhoods, and that is an issue that the city has been analyzing. The council recall that you've passed a 3-year short-term rental ordinance. You did put a cap on the total number of short-term rentals that are allowed in the R1. We've issued all those permits to date, and then the council's getting annual reports. So you got a report last August, a couple months ago, on the first year of implementation. We'll be coming back next summer with another review. At each of these reviews, the council does have the opportunity to make adjustments to the ordinances, and then ultimately in 3 years, we'll make the decision about whether to keep moving forward with it or make changes to it at that time.
Thank you. And listeners may have heard several speakers talk about the HCOC. That stands for Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee, and that's the group that's been working for over 2 years now on different issues revolving around housing and development fees, et cetera. Council comments, Mr. Gregory.
Yeah, I'd like to thank our staff and our very gifted person helping us with this project, Jennifer. It was just a very long and tough project, but the benefits and the quality of what we turned out are very, very nice. I'm on the Housing Constraints and Opportunity Commission, and I have to say that it's one of the more active committees I've been on, and the meetings flowed very well, somebody tutoring us through the process. And we were able to achieve a great deal in that. And I think that one of the most important things is, we're mandated by the state of California to have affordable housing and very low affordable housing. We were the only city to meet that requirement in the last round with the state of California. And I believe that we're going to again with the way things are going. I also think it's important for the public to understand when you have low income housing and high density, like the project being proposed out at the property for the Woodland property out on near Penny's, is it actually puts people living in spaces where they don't have to get in their vehicles. And it actually works quite the opposite of instead of increasing traffic and congestion, it actually helps it. And it makes it much easier for those residents. And then the ability to go and look at zoning and finding properties that are available to be developed for this was a very good process, in my opinion. And I have nothing but gratitude and thanks to the staff and to our consultant. This project came out really well. It's very well done, and it's going to get us through to 2028, and I believe we'll meet our goals. And I just want to thank everybody on the committee also that volunteers their time to input information to help us get ahead. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too want to echo that the Housing Constraint Committee is extremely important, I believe, in getting the public side into the government side of trying to get things to work better. An observation I might just put out here is that the housing inventory, which is kind of critical, to me, which equates to price of homes and price of apartments and such. Our city, in our graph here in 2020, we're at 3.8 vacancy rate, as opposed to the county, which is almost 13% vacancy rate. So that basically says to me that we need to build more to have more opportunity and actually control our pricing. And of course, when we have inventory, it's more competitive and therefore less expensive for people to live in Paso Robles. So I'm happy that we're moving forward with approving more units to be built. I also sit on the Measure M committee for the school district and found it particularly interesting. I actually printed out some sheets. The school enrollment and capacity chart that they have actually is showing more than what I heard that they have for enrollment. Of course, this is projected to 2022, but currently I think we all know that the school district is shy of students currently. So I'm going to share this with their staff. We have a meeting coming up on Monday. And I'm assuming also, this is a question for staff, do we share the housing element update with agencies, and particularly the Paso Robles School District?
This is Genevieve. There is a requirement to share it with sewer and water agencies. So after, assuming it's adopted tonight, it will be shared with local water and sewer agencies. There's not a specific requirement to share it with school districts, but we at HCOC, we had a great meeting with the school superintendent who attended and gave us some really good insight as well. And I'm sure he would be interested in seeing the document.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very helpful. You know, they have a huge bond that that the citizens, taxpayers approved to build and upgrade a lot of facilities for students. And, you know, this kind of information I think is critical for planning. So definitely I would think our staff need to reach out to them once this is approved. Thank you, Genevieve.
Thank you. Councilman Strong.
Yes, I was pleased to hear that information that was just received by Councilman Hammond. Many years ago, I wrote the state legislation that requires cities to notify the school districts when subdivisions are proposed, and I think this is a logical next step in that effort. Also, I have to compliment everybody on what they've done thus far, and on this particular document, as president of the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, I presided over the meetings where our new RENA numbers were given to us, and I know it is every 8 years. And over our last period of RENA numbers, we are the only city in the county that actually met 100% plus in every category but one of our RENA numbers. And in that one category, we are moving well close to that 100% for this RENA allocation already. So I'm very pleased with that. As this region's representative on the state-created Central Coast Housing Working Group, I was pleased in January to make the motion that approved our REAP funding allocations. So I'm glad to see that those are in process for Paso Robles, and the money's sitting there and waiting. So I hope we get that concluded as quickly as possible. As far as high density, you know, actually, we've held our high density here much lower than that of major cities, and the efforts that the state has tried to force upon us. And that was thanks to the League of California Cities and regional group efforts. But also, it's important to note that high density does make public transit more feasible. So there are many offsets in all of this, and it makes it a little bit more affordable for people who don't necessarily have to have as many personal vehicles as if they're doing local things. So I think this is a good document. I think it's great to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. This document, as Mr. Hammond was saying, sharing with the school, I think a lot of agencies could actually use this. I get emails from child care concerns or lack of enough child care in our community. As this report states, we need more child care facilities in the area as we're growing. Another thing I wanted to talk about with this update is for the project that's coming by JCPenney's. You know, that senior project, I think, is going to be amazing. I work at the pharmacy, and right now with COVID especially, I was getting a lot of seniors calling in saying they couldn't pick up their medications because they didn't have transportation. So with the seniors being right there, that's going to be great for them. A lot of the shopping is there for them. A lot of them use a lot of my customers use our local bus route. And this is just going to be great for them to be safer, to be near bank, food, things like that. I really appreciate staff thinking outside the box and the group for getting together. And if we can come up with more ideas like that, maybe even for students, you know, we need to start thinking about the ages, you know, between 18 and 20s, you know, where smaller homes or condos in our area could be another idea. But this is a great housing element project. I really appreciate this, and let's move forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We seem to be pretty much on the same page on this issue. We do have 3 resolutions in front of us. Unless there's further comments to be made, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Gregory.
So I see 4, but I'll just go through it and you stop.
I'm sorry, 4. You got it. 4.
Okay.
One's an ordinance, just for clarification.
Okay. So I move we approve Resolution A, adopting the mitigated negative declaration pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman. Was that Strong?
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilman Strong. I'm assuming there's no further discussion to the motion. If so, say so. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
I move that we approve Resolution B, adopting the general plan housing element amendment.
Second by Strong.
A motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. No further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
I move we introduce by title only Ordinance A, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Paso Robles, adopting zoning code text and map amendments RZN 20-03 to implement the 6th cycle housing element and waive further reading.
Second by Strong.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye, sorry, I was muted.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
I move we approve Resolution C, approving the identification of 3, 4, 5 cycles 2 surplus density units and allocation of surplus density units to parcel 009-814-044 and parcel number 009-814-035.
Second by Strong.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We move on now to item number 22, the 2021 Community Development Block Grant Program and the Draft Annual Action Plan. Staff report, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is Darren Nash, City Planner, giving the report on the 2021 CDBG Draft Action Plan. What's before us tonight is the Draft Action Plan for the 2021 program. CDBG funds, and I should back up, CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grants. And these are federal funds allocated through the county for the following purposes, which is to benefit low-income persons and to eliminate blight. The council is to prioritize the fund allocations. One is public improvement projects, 2 public service program grants, and 3 grant administration. The anticipated allocation for the 2021 program is $244,146. Of that allocation, the city has the ability to pay or to allocate up to 80% in projects and programs and 20% for administration. Of the 80%, up to 15% could be allocated to the public service programs, which is typically what the city does with the CDBG programs. So another way to look at it here is with the allocation, $158,695 could go to a public improvement project, $36,622, the 15% can go to a public service, and $48,829 can go to program administration. It's important to note in relation to the administration fundings, the city has entered in a cooperation agreement with the county. The county helps administer these funds. They get allocated from the federal government to the county, and then the county distributes to the cities within the county. So there's quite a bit of work that's done by county staff to administer the CDBG program, as well as city staff. The application that the city provided for a public improvement project was a project on Black Oak Drive. This is the area that's near the Home Key Motel 6 project and would help with some of the driveway approaches and pedestrian ramps for the existing sidewalk and the existing pathways from the Black Oak area down towards 24th Street to where the services are. This project would install some new pedestrian ramps as well as upgrade some driveway approaches so that they were met the criteria for accessibility purposes. Thank you. This is a overview of the project. Some curb ramps at the corner, some driveway approaches working from north to south where 24th Street is. The circles indicate the curb ramps, and the purple areas indicate drive approaches. And this would help pedestrian access from the Black Oak Drive area down to the 24th Street. Also applied for beyond the city's Black Oak Drive project and beyond the city's request for administration funds are the public service applications. There were 6 applications for public services, one from CASA, which is a foster child intervention group, People Self-Help, which is supportive housing program, 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, and I want to clarify the program and project under 5 Cities Homeless Coalition says Homeless Shelter and Meal Program, but that's incorrect. 5CHC, which is how they abbreviate, is more specifically related to rental assistance and focuses on rental assistance throughout the county. There's also an application by El Camino Homeless Organization, or ECHO, and then CAPSLO, or Community Action Partnership. And then the other is, I forgot to mention on the public service side, is a request by the organization RISE for roof repair for a home within the city limits that helps with as a women's shelter. So these are the applications for the 2021 program. There's also another component we're asking the council to consider, and that's reallocation of some 2017 program funds. 2017, the City Council approved the Oak Creek Park project, and this was to provide some sidewalk and curb ramps along Scott Street adjacent to the Sherwood Forest Park, and some curb ramps at the intersection of Preston Road and Cedarwood. It's been determined that these projects, this work for these, for the sidewalk and ramps and intersection can be done in the future with adjacent projects. So there's a Sherwood Park master plan that's being worked on, and at some point in the future when that project moves forward, there'll be some work involved that can take care of these projects along Scott Street. And there is some work on the curb ramps at the intersection of Cedarwood and Preston Road. And that's one of the intersections that was brought up for improvement with some of the recent specific plan projects. So there really isn't a need for the CDBG program to move forward with these projects. So the request of this is that these funds, which is about $116,000, be reallocated with this 2021 program. The thought would be is that, and I'm sorry, it's more about 119,000. Option A before the council tonight proposes that 35,000 of the 119,000 would help fund the request by Rise to repair the roof of the house that they are using as a shelter. And then the balance, approximately 84,000, would go towards the 2019 Sierra Bonita Ramps project. That project is getting close to go out to bid, and it's anticipated that based on the number of applications and the amounts of the applications, it's possible that we can fund all of the requests as proposed. There actually is a little bit more in the public service sides of funds, $515, which exceeds the amount that was requested for the public service funds. So that's shown here under section F as $515 going in addition to the requested $12,000 for ECHO. But as we look here at option A, this would fund everything, including the $35,000 for the roof for the Rise project. We're also asking with option A that we set March 2nd as the council meeting for the final action plan. So tonight we're looking at the draft action plan, reviewing the applications with the council and with the public, and looking for direction from council. When we come back in March, it will be for adoption of the final action plan. And then number 3 is to reallocate the $119,000, as I mentioned previously, for the roof repair, and then the remaining go to the 2019 Sierra Bonita ramp project. There are some other options here if council would like to look into those and not go with option A, and we can do those accordingly. But that would end my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. We will do council questions first, then go to the public, and then council consideration. Council questions of staff. Councilman Gregory.
Hi, Darren. Thank you for your report. I have a question on item 3, or motion number 3. So the reallocation of the 119,000, of that 84,692 would go to the 2019 Sierra Bonita fund. How much funding is in that now for the 2019 fund? What's existing?
Let me look at my notes here real quick. So I believe it's right around 170,000, and this would take it up over to closer to the $240,000 range.
And so that would replace several of the intersections and the handicap ramps, accessible ramps throughout the neighborhood?
That's correct. With the Sierra Bonita neighborhoods, this is probably the third cycle of CDBG grant funds that have gone towards the Sierra Bonita area. It is an area being a senior community that meets the criteria for requesting CDBG help. And it also coincides with street paving projects that Public Works has on their list. So it saves the city money to work with CDBG on the ramps as well as doing the paving at the same time. And so that's why over the past few years, we've seen quite a bit of activity out in the Sierra Bonita area.
Okay, very good. And then I have another question. This comes up every year, and I guess this year it's a little different. Didn't we have like a minimum amount we could give to these groups before, like of $8,000 or $9,000 or whatever it was? And now I'm seeing much lower amounts. Can you explain that for us?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So the reason why we're seeing the smaller amounts is because these organizations have applied to multiple cities in the county. And since these funds are administered through the county, as long as they're over that $8,000 threshold countywide, then they meet that requirement.
Okay, so it's countywide, not just Paso. Okay.
Correct.
And then can you tell us what is item E for the 5 CHC for homeless shelter and meal program? Those are for meal programs all around the county. How does that affect us in Paso Robles?
Sure. The summary indicates homeless shelter and meal program, and that's incorrect for 5 CHC. The more of the focus there is for rental assistance, and this is a coalition made up of various organizations. I believe ECHO is also part of the 5 CHC group. But they do provide for rental assistance within the city limits of Paso Robles. And as we move forward and get to the final action plan in the March date, we can provide more specific information on that.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm in favor of all these, but I just wanted to understand them fully. So thank you for a very good review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Darren, question on the 2017 allocation. How long do they have before we lose it? In other words, 3 years and not being applied. Is there a time limit on these kind of funds?
There are things, we work with the county to make sure that the funds are active, but once the funds are allocated, they're there for a certain project. And the reason why we're coming back to council tonight is specifically take it from the 2017 program and put it somewhere else. They don't go away, and we have to show where they're going and show that where they're going complies with the CDBG requirements. So there really isn't a time limit. Sometimes CDBG projects can kind of hang around for quite some time. If you recall, some of the work that was done on the 13th Street and Pine Street was a CDBG project. That project, the program funds for CDBG was around for quite some time because we wanted to wait and do all of 13th Street with the other funding sources and get all of that done at one time. So they can stay around for quite some time.
I see. Is there any other projects back there in years past that still have not been used?
No, the 2017 is the kind of the oldest one we have. So bringing that forward, getting it to projects that are ready to go forward. We'd all like to kind of keep these projects going and get caught up on the projects with their respective years.
Okay. And then I kind of agree on item 3 there, or E, option E, about the 5 CHC. And again, I'm assuming that those are like Section 8 housing, which again on this new Motel 6, there's 63 units there of those kind of residences, and that we probably are going to be seeing come into Paso Robles. And obviously these monies could be used toward that kind of help for those folks in that situation, I'm assuming.
Yes, and again, we can get more clarification. I believe the addendum that was provided to you was more specific information on the 5 Cities Homeless Coalition. So your questions maybe will be able to answer there. But for the amount of $3,500 is what they're requesting from Paso Robles. They have some facilities or some programs where they can fund programs here in the city, but I will definitely get more specific information on that. I believe that the applicant or the director for 5 CHC was not available tonight, but there could be some folks in the public comment that could help answer our questions as well.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Strong.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to compliment staff because I think this is one of the most balanced CDBG programs that I've seen in my many years with the city. It has a little bit of something for almost everyone that's within the parameters of CDBG. And also, I think this is very good on reallocation of $119,000 because the funds are in Sierra Bonita and it's just giving it from the left hand and taking it from the left hand and giving it to the right hand. So it's just allocated to a slightly different location within the same general area. Very, very well thought out, very well proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the council members. I was reading this report and I agree on all of these organizations. Well deserved. They do a lot for our community, for Paso de Robles, and for our county in general. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The one question I have of staff is regarding line F. For years and years now, we've issued CDBG funds to ECHO and Atascadero, primarily because we had no facilities of our own to accommodate homeless. And just recently, we facilitated putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in their hands, along with 2 other partners on the Motel 6 project. One of the caveats was they wouldn't need any assistance from the city for 5 years. How does that square with that deal?
So this is specific to the CDBG program of the 2021 program year. I think the other funds were related to other funding sources from the, and I don't recall if they were COVID related, but there's some other funding sources that the ECHO used for the other the shelter program for within the city. This is them specifically for the Atascadero shelter with this amount, and you're right, this has been pretty consistent where the city has helped fund that. And there may be someone from ECHO who can help explain that in the public comment, a little more information.
Very good, thank you. Any further questions of staff? Councilman Gregory?
I'm good, thank you.
Councilman Hammond?
No, sir.
Councilman Strong?
No, thank you.
Councilwoman Garcia?
No, sir.
Very good. We'll go now to public comment. I have 2 people that wish to speak, I believe. First is Catherine Manning. Catherine, are you with us?
Yes, I am on the line. Can you hear me as well?
We can.
Okay, this is Catherine Manning. I am with People's Self-Help Housing. I'm a social worker located at 3533 Empleos Street in San Luis Obispo. I'm happy to be speaking as you are addressing and adopting the housing element. People's Self-Help Housing has 4 housing properties in Paso Robles, Creekside Gardens, which is for 62 and over, 29 units, Creston Gardens, which is family housing, 60 units, Los Robles Terrace, which is 62 units, for 62 and disabled, 40 units, and Canyon Creek that has 68 units, which is farm worker and family housing. And in addition to the miracle to create housing and the miracle to get people in housing from homelessness services, is also a very critical service that oftentimes is overlooked, which is keeping people in housing. And that's where supportive housing program comes in to be a vital resource to sustaining people into housing. When people with various abilities, whether they're seniors, veterans, disabled, behavioral health, mentally ill, all sorts of different variations of populations, these populations become at risk of falling out of housing without supportive housing services in place. People's Self-Help Housing has a program called Supportive Housing Program, where we have social workers directly assigned to properties that help sustain and enhance the residents living in our housing. So we do coordinate with services. I did hear 5 cities mentioned as rental assistance. We use them. We coordinate services with Catholic Charities, Salvation Army. There are lots of services in the community, and without social workers connecting the residents on the properties to these services can go underutilized or not utilized at all. And so that's where supportive services comes in, and working with seniors. We help to connect and coordinate them with multiple services: food services, medical services, transportation services, one-time food programs, food banks. We help them not fall out of housing. We help them to connect with families. We do everything to educational services to help them be sustained and productive and even advancing. And when they become at risk, we help to keep them from falling out of housing. So I always say I have 14 years of homeless service experience directly working with homeless. I have 8 years with People's Self-Help Housing. I say it takes a miracle to get people into housing and another miracle to keep them in housing. And the worst thing to do is to see people fall out of housing because it takes so much more money and resources to get them back into housing.
Very good.
So just with that, I say thank you, and thank you for your recommended funding to support People's Self-Help Housing.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Also online to speak tonight, we have Teresa Tardif. Teresa, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, thank you. I'm the Executive Director of Court-Appointed Special Advocates, CASA of San Luis Obispo County. We've applied for CDBG funding. The children we serve urgently need assistance due to abuse and neglect by their parents and because of their removal to foster care. We provide children and young adult former foster youth with highly trained volunteers who work one-on-one with them to assure they find safe, loving, and permanent homes, or they enter adulthood with the skills and support they need. Nationally, 50% of homeless people have spent time in foster care. We seek to reduce the likelihood of an abused child becoming a homeless adult by improving their health, education, and overall well-being through a long-term relationship with a committed volunteer who helps them navigate this scary and confusing time. The children in foster care are housing insecure and lack stability. In this county, 69% of kids in foster care have had 2 or more homes in the last year, which often comes with a change in schools, loss of their friends, and familiar surroundings. But the children with a CASA volunteer are more likely to graduate high school, less likely to be involved in the criminal justice system, and spend less time in foster care. In 2019, CASA reduced foster care stays for children in the county by at least 118.8 months by finding 13 children permanent homes, and that's not counting those who successfully reunify with their birth families. The estimated value of this savings to the county is $1,497,000. The value to a child of finding a permanent home, of course, is priceless. During the pandemic, CASA volunteers have provided a lifeline for children isolated in a new unfamiliar home, young adults in their first apartment who didn't have a way to even get groceries when public transportation was unavailable, connecting children with computers or a hotspot to do schoolwork. In 2019, we served 52 Paso Robles children. There were 19 others who didn't get a CASA, but 8 of those were assigned CASAs this year. Funding from the city would be so important to us, both in enabling us
I think you've muted yourself. We've lost you.
I'm sorry, when did I lose you?
Just about 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. So I told you that there's 52 kids in Paso Robles that we served in 2019, and 19 more who didn't get a CASA, but 8 of those got CASA volunteers this year. The funding from the city would be so important to us, both in enabling us to serve more kids, but also in demonstrating to prospective donors that the Paso Robles community supports our program. So thank you for your consideration.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. I do not see that we have anyone else from the public who wishes to speak. I will close public comment, bring it back to the council. Mr. Gregory.
No further questions. I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready.
Okay, let's do one round of comments and we'll go to the motion, okay?
Sure.
Mr. Hammond?
No further comment. Yeah, second motion whenever you're ready or whatever you need.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Strong?
No further comments, and I'll just abide by Mr. Gregory and Mr. Hammond's comments.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Garcia?
Nothing further, sir.
Very good. The only comment I would make would be the ones that have been made already in the form of questions, and that is, I'd like to see what where the funds are targeted for assistance through 5CHC, and then we should give some thought to ECHO. Like I say, traditionally we've funded ECHO because we have not had our own homeless services. We will be having those services thanks to ECHO and thanks to grant funds that they've received and grant funds that we have supplied. So we might want to take a little closer look at that money and how that's applied in the future. So with that, Mr. Gregory.
I'd like to go make a motion, but first, before I do that, I'd like to thank RISE, CASA, People's Self-Help Housing, ECHO, CAPSLO, and that rent funding program. Thank all of those organizations for their support and assistance to our citizens in Paso Robles. With that, I'd like to make a motion that, let's see, here we go. That we direct that the following applications be listed in the draft 1-year action plan as being recommended for funding. A, Black Oak infill ramp project and drive approaches for $158,695 approaches. B, for the RISE roof repair. C, CASA for foster child intervention and avert homelessness. D, for the People's Self-Help Housing for supportive housing program for $3,707. E, for the 5CHC for homeless shelter and meal program for $3,500. F, for ECHO for homeless shelter and meal program for $1,215. And G, for CAPSLO for the adult center for $14,400. And H, for administration of $48,129, totaling $244,146. And in option A, the $30,000, $5,000 would be funded by the allocated 2017 CBDG funds. I'm done.
Second.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor, from Hammond.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Hammond. Just a little bit of discussion. You read 5CHC as being homeless shelter and meal program. I believe Mr. Nash said actually those services are for rental assistance.
Correct. I'll agree to that comment.
Very good. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilman Gregory?
No.
Hammond?
No.
Strong?
No, sir.
Garcia?
No, sir.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
I move that we set the March 2nd, 2021 regular city council meeting as the date for the public hearing for the 2021 CDBG allocations.
And Steve, you can do both these last two recommendations as one motion if you'd like.
Okay, and we reallocate the 119,692 in this 2017 CBDG funds for Oak Creek Park project to fund the RISE request for the roof repair in the amount of 35,000 and provide 84,692 to the 2019 Sierra Bonita Ramps CBDG project.
Second for Hammond.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Hammond. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 23, introduced by title only, an ordinance of the City Council amending Title 21, zoning of the El Paso Robles Municipal Code to repeal Section 21.20.232, unlawful areas to camp. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is an item to introduce an ordinance to repeal Paso Robles Municipal Code Section 21.20.232 regarding unlawful areas to camp. This is really just a cleanup item, and if I could have the next slide, I'll explain why. Which is, the council may recall, in October, at the first meeting in October, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance 1103, which added Chapter 7.50 in the Health and Safety Code section of the Municipal Code. And the purpose of that was to really address some cleanup that needed to be done with the camping ordinance and address new changes in the law, and in particular, the Martin versus City of Boise case. So this new chapter addressed the anti-camping provisions and prohibited camping in lands owned or operated by the city, lands zoned as open space, high fire risk areas, and water supply risk areas, but included, in accordance with Martin v. Boise, some additional explanation regarding enforcement, which we did not have, and we wanted to include in large part because there was a lot of activity going on, as you recall, with the riverbed cleanup at the time. And so we wanted to make sure the camping ordinance was up to date. If I could have the next slide, please. And the reason we did it as an urgency ordinance was, in part, the camping ordinance that the city had in place was in the zoning code, and a very simple provision, but had not been updated in many years. And so with the activities happening to help clean up the riverbed, there was a bunch of findings that the council reviewed at the time they adopted the urgency ordinance regarding the fires, in particular in the riverbed, a large number of which were attributed to campfires, and then also concerns with the public water supply as a result of the illegal camping. So that was adopted as an urgency measure to get that in place while that was happening. And then the zoning code cleanup is now what's occurring. And as the council knows, with a zoning code amendment, it requires planning commission approval first and a multi-step process to adopt. So we opted to proceed with the urgency ordinance first and then follow this cleanup. So this is simply that next step in the process to clean up the municipal code and repeal the old provision 21.20.232 in the zoning code. So we took that to the Planning Commission at their November 10th, 2020 meeting. The Planning Commission adopted unanimously a resolution recommending that the council repeal the old provision in the zoning code, section 21.20.232. And so that takes us to this last slide here, which is the recommendation for the council tonight that you introduce by title only an ordinance amending Title 21 of the zoning code to repeal section 21.20.232 and waive further reading. So it is a simple ordinance. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions of staff, beginning with Councilman Gregory.
Yeah, I just have one quick question of council. Does this coincide with the upcoming ordinance from the county, or is this just our own?
This is just our own. It's just a cleanup following on the heels of the adoption of the urgency ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kimberly, I don't think I've ever seen that word exigent before, but basically in a sense that our ordinance would overlie private property that is in the riverbed area. Is that kind of what I'm reading into this? Is that we're making a finding that because of the threat that the ordinance would cover property not owned by the city that could be camped on?
No, so the findings that were up there were just as a reminder for the background. The council actually already approved those findings in adopting Ordinance 1103 at the October 6th meeting. So the ordinance tonight that we're asking that you introduce just simply repeals the prior section, which was in Title 21 in the zoning code. So this is just cleanup. The provision about the exigent circumstances is in the provision of Chapter 7.50 that the council adopted in October.
Okay, so I guess my main question is then, isn't there areas within the riverbed that are non-owned? In other words, private property. The city does not own those areas, and do we have authority over those areas? Right. So the changes that the council adopted in October were focused obviously on public property, but there was a concern, with Martin versus City of Boise and the inability to enforce what was originally a very broad camping prohibition if there was no basically alternative shelter in place. And so with this, that addressed that situation and would allow camping during certain hours of the day, basically on public property without being enforced if there's no alternative shelter. But there was an exception in there for high fire risk areas, basically, so that if there's areas which are high fire risk, you could still enforce the no camping prohibition as long as they can camp somewhere else. So that we're, part of that was to help with the cleaning up of the riverbed and making sure that campsites weren't getting reintroduced during periods where maybe there wasn't any shelter, so that there are limited areas where camping is still prohibited because we're allowing it elsewhere. Okay, well that's what I'm trying to get to, that question of the riverbed. I mean, I understand that, again, because we have Motel 6 now, that is technically our location that we can say they need to be, and therefore tell them to leave the riverbed. But do we have, again, authority over the entire riverbed, even though it may not be city-owned property? So that's a good question. And the ordinance that you adopted in October prohibits camping upon any land designated by the fire chief as a fire risk area. And so it would give you some ability to enforce there. Obviously, if someone has private property and they're allowing someone to camp, then it would be a potential issue. But I don't believe that's an issue that we've encountered in the riverbed to date. But I would have to follow up with you on this. The item this evening is just the cleanup. Okay. No, I'm happy with the language. We're getting there essentially to have some sort of authority to tell them to leave, and that's really what I was trying to find out. So it sounds like we're in the right track. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you, Councilman Strong.
I'm just happy to see that we're cleaning this up. Thank you.
Councilwoman Garcia.
Nothing further, sir.
Very good. I'm looking at my screen. I see no one here for public comment. I'll open the public comment period and close it, bring it back to the council. Mr. Gregory.
I'm ready to make a motion, sir.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that we introduce by title only ordinance number XXX, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Paso Robles, amending Title 21 zoning of the El Paso de Robles Municipal Code to repeal section 21.20.232, unlawful areas to camp, and waive further reading.
Second, Ms. Strong.
Motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 23A, approval of amended and restated joint powers agreement for the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority, allowing consolidation of South County Transit into the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority. Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Ryan Cornell, Admin Services Director. I am fortunate enough to have Jeff Straw, the Executive Director from SLO RTA, on the line with us, and he's going to give the staff presentation this evening.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to give my appreciation to you for allowing me to talk about this item. This is something we've been working on for about 4 years now. Little background, the City of Paso Robles is a member of the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority Joint Powers Agreement. The RTA was formed in 1990, and it includes all 7 cities in the county as well as the county of San Luis Obispo. Next slide, please. This discussion is similar to one we had back in 2013 and 2014 when the City of Paso Robles consolidated services into the RTA. And the real goals of that effort were to, as shown in the slide here, is reduce duplication of services. And at the time, Route 9 duplicated some services that were operated by the El Camino shuttle in Atascadero on up into Templeton, and then Route C from Paso Express was duplicated by Route 9 from Templeton into Paso Robles. So it did reduce some transit services there, and which of course saved operating funds and some capital costs. One of the best reasons that I think that that effort culminated in an agreement to consolidate into RTA was improved coordination between the local services. Your local services, Paso Robles Express, Route A and Route B, tie in very closely to Route 9, which continues services on up into the Paso Robles campus of Cuesta College. And then finally, the City of Paso Robles and the City of Atascadero were facing some fare box recovery ratio penalties. In short, the funding source primarily used to fund transit in the state of California is the Transit Development Act. And the state has a requirement that for urbanized areas like the City of Paso Robles, you must have a 20% fare box recovery ratio. In short, that means that the fares must cover a minimum of 20% of the operating costs. Next slide, please. So South County Transit was looking at some of the same challenges that Paso Robles was facing in the early teens. And in fact, South County Transit, which is comprised of the cities of Arroyo Grande, Grover Beach, Pismo Beach, and the county for the Oceano area and the Avila Beach area, they're facing a $70,000 annual penalty because of the fare box recovery ratio requirements. One of the challenges is when your city consolidated into RTA, you still are an existing entity and you can make legislative decisions like budget making and so forth at your city council. If the South County Transit JPA was eliminated without some way of providing that local control, there could be some challenges with funding the service. So we came up with this idea of a new standing committee under the RTA called the South County Transit Committee. It's comprised of the RTA board members from those 3 cities and the county. There's again, we have some duplication of services down in the South County area with RTA Route 10, which operates between San Luis Obispo and Santa Maria. So overall, we're looking at about an $82,000 annual cost savings through consolidation. Next slide, please. So in short, what we're asking for is each of the jurisdictions in the RTA JPA to consider an amended and restated joint powers agreement, which includes the local control for the services in the South County area, separate from the regional services that are funded by the jurisdictions. All of the cities, besides the Paso Robles, have adopted or have approved the resolution for this amended and restated joint powers agreement. The South County Transit Board of Directors has adopted a resolution to eliminate the South County Transit Program as a separate entity, and the RTA board at its meeting tomorrow morning will consider the this same resolution. So with the action tonight, this will finalize the process for consolidating South County into RTA. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to say I want to thank Councilmember Strong. He's serving as our president of the RTA board, and I've been here for a little over 8 years, and this is his second stint as president, which is ending this month. So I do want to thank him for his service to the RTA. And again, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Council questions of staff or of Mr. Straw, starting with Councilman Gregory.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond?
Yep. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strong?
No, sir. Thank you.
And Ms. Garcia?
No, sir, no questions.
Thank you. Open public comment. I see no one on the list to comment on this, so we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for action. Mr. Gregory?
Further comment? No.
Yes, please.
No more comments from me.
Okay. Mr. Hammond?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Strong?
No further comments. I would move approval.
Okay.
Amended and restated joint powers agreement for the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority, allowing consolidation of South County Transit into the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority.
Second.
That's
I have a motion by
Resolution 20-XXX, authorizing the execution of.
I have a motion by Councilman Strong, second by Councilman Gregory. If there's no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
And Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the one that was pulled from the consent calendar. This is item number 11, approval of modifications to health benefit contributions for elected officials. Could we get a brief staff report on this before we enter our usual litany?
Good evening, Mayor Martin and council members. I do have a couple of slides to bring up. Let me pull those up one moment. All right, so as you're aware, elected officials do receive a monthly stipend plus benefits, which include medical, dental, vision, and employee assistance program benefits. In April of 2008, there was a change to the elected officials' dental insurance to cover the full premium for both the elected official and all of their dependents. In January of 2018, there was also a modification toward elected officials' medical insurance, modifying the defined contribution to an amount equal to either single or two-party coverage of the PERS choice plan. And if you can go to next slide, please. There. And but we recently discovered that due to ensure compliance with Government Code Section 53208.5, which mandates that health and welfare benefits of any member of a legislative body of any city shall be no greater than that received by non-safety employees of that public agency. Therefore, to ensure compliance with the government code, the proposal is to modify the monthly contribution for medical and dental insurance benefits to match that of either the SEIU or management employee groups to be a defined contribution, whichever remains the more generous benefit. There will be a, as you can see on the slide, the current contribution toward health insurance for elected officials and the updated contributions for 2021, what the change will be, as well as the difference for dental insurance. And based on the current enrollment plan that elected officials have chosen, the monthly cost for elected officials is as follows. There will be an increase in contribution for elected officials for single party and two party coverage. Family coverage will decrease a bit for 2021, and dental insurance will show an increase for 2021. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Council questions of staff. Mr. Gregory.
So just to clarify, those of us that have been receiving this benefit will now be paying out of pocket, let's say for elected official plus one dependent, $309.38 a month. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the dental program, $4.20 for the elected official plus one?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Hammond?
No question, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Strong?
No, I have no questions. I'm going to have some comments though, and I'm going to make a motion to continue for some additional study.
Very good. Councilwoman Garcia?
So Shannon is, can I deny benefits?
Yes, anyone may cancel coverage at any point, but re-enrolling into health insurance is only allowed during open enrollment or during a qualified event, such as losing coverage elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Very good. Open for public comment. I see no one on the list to comment. Close public comment, bring it back to City Council for discussion. Mr. Gregory?
Yeah, I want to make a comment, and this is not to be construed negatively, but the timing on this is very interesting. So if I were to choose to opt out of this, the only time I can do that is in the next 3 days, because the Social Security or the Medicare applications only have open enrollment for 3 more days, which is going to make it, after we talked to somebody today on the phone, almost impossible to get. So for those of us that have issues with this, we don't have any opportunity to react in a fair amount of time. That's my comment.
Councilman Hammond?
No real comment, Mr. Mayor. Just we're going backward. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strong?
Yes, I would say that, the state law cited in the staff report refers to inequities caused by uneven, conflicting, and inconsistent health and welfare benefits. And it was adopted into law effective January 1st, 1995. Now, the way this law would change a pre-existing policy of the city of Paso Robles actually creates new inequities internally, in addition to those which may have been created externally by other agencies over which we have no control. Our basic policy predates this change in the law and may therefore be a grandfathered benefit not subject to this provision, although we may have amended that initial basic policy of the city over the years. It's been in effect for many decades. However, separate and distinct from that is the internal inequity that already exists within our own policy, as also stated in the staff report, which flies in the face of our current efforts to eliminate prejudice and inequities under the law. This particular inequity is one of circumstance potentially created by age, ethnicity, or other factors that we are attempting to eliminate through policies to be developed with the assistance of a newly created committee for that purpose. The correct way to consider bringing our pre-existing grandfathered policy into compliance with the intent of this subsequent state law may not be that suggested here, but rather an elimination of the inequity in application of the terms of the benefit. If all employees and beneficiaries of this benefit are to be treated equally, then the cost must also be equal without getting down into the weeds of personal family circumstances or amount of salary received for their contribution to the city function. This matter needs additional study and analysis to become more equitable and non-discriminatory before we apply any specific remedy, if one is found to be called for. The answer to this, if we wish to change our pre-existing policy, may be to eliminate the employees' cost differential between each other without regard to the number of people in their specific family group. And this benefit is designed to keep our employees healthy. Their physical and mental health is very important to their ability to perform their work without distractions. It is just as important to not have to worry about your own health or your spouse's health as that of your children. There should be no inequity or disincentive to provide for your own or your spouse's health than for your entire family if it extends beyond those people. I ask that this be continued to a future meeting after additional analysis and policy considerations have been considered and weighed. This may include consideration for some contract amendments in order to keep all employees' circumstances more equitable. So I would like to see this continued and study just a little bit more to make it a little more equitable within our own circumstances as well. And I so move that we continue this.
I have a motion to continue. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilman Gregory. Councilwoman Garcia hasn't had a chance to comment yet. Let's start with you.
Well, sir, insurance companies are always changing. So before we continue, we just need to ask Shannon if there's a time limit.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
So they want to research this and see if they can make any changes. Is there a time limit? I mean, most insurances, you have to sign up by a certain time.
There would be no current changes to any of the plans, as we're still going to remain enrolled in CalPERS health insurance coverage. And there is no change in premiums. It's more so the direction in terms of the contributions that elected officials in the city pay toward those premiums.
But Shannon, if a council member, based on this change, were to pull out of CalPERS coverage, wouldn't that be a qualifying event that would then allow, regardless of what happens tonight or within the next month or two, that would then allow the council member to use that as a qualifying event for applying for open enrollment or the equivalent in another plan? I'm trying to understand Mr. Gregory's, that he was told he had only 3 days. I don't understand that.
Different plans do have different rules. In general, you have to show that you lost coverage due to no fault of your own, but different companies will allow you to jump onto their health insurance as a qualifying event of canceling coverage elsewhere. But I would imagine that each agency or company may have different rules. In terms of enrolling in Medicare, I'm not sure what the rules are, as I'm not very knowledgeable about Medicare enrollment processes.
Wouldn't we be happy to write a letter saying that coverage was, due to changing circumstances, coverage was ended through no fault of the council member?
Sure, and I would imagine that ending coverage through the city of Paso Robles would be an opportunity for somebody to be able to enroll in a Medicare plan. I'm not sure why the answer was no, that you could only do so during open enrollment, because even Medicare does allow for somebody to enroll outside of their standard open enrollment period.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shannon.
Okay, further discussion on the motion?
Martin, maybe I can.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to note that, if there's a continuance, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a very long one, because I think this came about when the Human Resources Department was reviewing the plans and the policies. So I think the provision in the state law is clear that the benefits to the council should not be greater than those received by a non-safety employment group, which is where in the staff report they address the management and SEIU groups. The council, though, the alternative as part of that study would be whether there's interest in raising then the other benefits to match what the council is looking to maintain, I guess. So that's the other option of, obviously that involves the meet and confer. So I think if there's any other information that we can provide on that, now would be great to make sure when we bring it back, we have all the questions that are at issue.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Gregory?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Strong? I'm sorry, Mr. Hammond?
Well, yeah, discussion if we can look at other benefits to compensate for the loss. I think that would be appropriate, especially if we continue.
Okay, Mr. Strong, it's your motion. Any further discussion on the motion, Mr. Strong?
Well, the other, the one group that wasn't even mentioned by Kimberly is the unrepresented employees. That's another group who we could look at adjusting possibly, and so that they and the city council were in conformity. So there are options that we could look at during this period of continuance.
Thank you. Councilwoman Garcia, any further discussion on the motion?
No, sir. No, sir.
I have just a couple of things to add to the discussion. First of all, this is something apparently that has existed in government code since 1995. So I suppose I'd be thankful that payment of insurance premiums is not retroactive at this point, because that would be quite a difficulty for all of us, I think. The issue addressed by the code seems to be equity between elected officials and employees, which I've always backed in the past. I don't think that we're any better than any of the employees. But the equity here seems to me, common sense equity seems to be compare my stipend with the average employee's salary versus the benefit of health insurance. And I think if we looked at any of our stipends, I make a little bit more than the rest of the council. And for those of you out there who think that the mayor makes tons of money, I make $800 a month, and the other council members make less. But my stipend amounts to maybe 1/50th, maybe 1/60th of the average staff salary. So that, I mean, if the argument of equity was all we were talking about, I think that would be something to be considered. But it seems pretty plain, according to the city attorney, that in order to conform with the code, we have to make this change. If in fact we do that, then I think we should return to a discussion we had maybe over a year ago, and that is looking at the stipends that are offered to council members to offset the cost of the health insurance costs. Not because this is a salaried position. We've all maintained this is a public service. We're not making anywhere near a salary, but because that would be an equitable thing to do, considering that the stipends are so much less than an average salary in the employee base. So possibly we should consider changing those stipends in the future. I don't mind delaying this, but I'm going to ask again the city attorney. You mentioned there was some urgency in making sure that we comply. Do we have time to study this, or do we need to go ahead and take a vote to comply with this and then make whatever adjustments we think are necessary, either in employee status or in elected status in the future?
I think you have time to review that. As Shannon noted, there are the two options, right, which is either to make sure your benefits are in compliance with or no greater than the non-safety employee groups and the most generous schedule of that, or you can bring others up. So we can bring that back and look at those items. This does change, obviously, as benefits for your represented groups and your MOUs change. So that's why, it's one of those that it's evaluated periodically. And so I don't think you have an issue back, retroactively. It's just, there's new contracts, new benefit levels that we need to review, but I do think you have some time. I just wanted to be sure we didn't push it out too far.
Very good. Okay, so one more time through one more time through discussions on the motion. Let's take it in order. Mr. Gregory.
So Kimberly, on a comment that Mayor Martin made on equity, does that hold any validity in this policy?
So unfortunately, the law is a little stricter with respect to the council compensation and benefits. They're actually in separate provisions. And I know Shannon worked closely with some of our benefits specialist because this is a very complicated area of the law and difficult to parse what the requirements are. We can certainly look at that, but my understanding is that that was part of what was looked at, and that the provisions don't allow you to take into account the compensation versus the benefits and what the employees are receiving in salary, that they're treated separately. The benefits you receive are not counted against the stipend you're allowed to receive under the law. And then on the other hand, it doesn't take any part into what benefit level you're allowed to receive as far as health benefits are concerned. So I know it can be frustrating, and it doesn't always keep up with the reality of costs, and certainly the stipends do not. But we can look into that. The stipends are generally the steps to increase that. It's 5% maximum. You can multiply it by the number of years since the last increase, which I believe has been some period of time. The one catch with the stipends is that typically you can adopt what you'd like to the increase in a stipend, but it doesn't take effect under the law until you have the next municipal election. So there is some difficulty in the timing, as I recall. We can take a closer look at that, though, when we bring this back.
Thank you.
Mr. Hammond?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strong.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a good point, too. I think your suggestion is good. Let's take another look at our particular stipend. But also, in looking at that stipend, she's correct. That stipend was set in law by the legislature in 1949 and has never been increased. So therefore, we are very, very limited as to how much we could even increase it. And that would be very good information to come back with this continuance as to what's allowed, or even somewhere before this comes back, to see if there is some kind of compensation we can do there. Thank you.
Very good. Further comment on the motion, Councilwoman Garcia?
No, sir.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. We are now at item number 24, current council committee activities and reports. And once again, we start with Mr. Gregory.
Well, I wanted to wish everybody a happy holiday. Thanksgiving was rather peaceful and quiet in town. You can really see a difference in the amount of people that were in our city over the holidays. And everybody is doing a good job of complying as far as we can see. I just want to encourage people to keep their businesses alive any way we can, and hopefully we can get some help somewhere from the COVID numbers dropping or a change in the state of California's regulation of the businesses. That's all for me.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had multiple meetings here in the last couple of weeks. First one I'll report on is APCD. The main takeaway from that meeting was we received our 2019 annual air quality report. Basically, overall improvement in the county of San Luis Obispo, which is refreshing. We've been pretty much stable for a long time. We're actually seeing it improve now, and it has a lot to do with the Red Hills area, which is east of Shandon, and that is where we get some import of ozone from the valley. So its sources over there that generate the ozone have been cutting down, and their work to reduce is definitely affecting a little bit of our air quality for the good. The next thing I did was the Paso Water Basin Cooperative Committee. Main topic there was the County Board of Supervisors ordinance regarding fallowing of property, which essentially conserves water, will be going away next year, and there's some discussion about extending that. Next one was the Atascadero Water Basin, the GSP that they're working through. They worked on draft sections of 4 through 7. As you recall, our Paso Basin has already completed our GSP and is actually at DWR, Department of Water Resources at California, to be reviewed, and they take, I think, up almost a year and a half or 2 years to actually do that. So we're moving forward on our plan, GSP plan. The next one was integrated waste management, and that one I think a little more discussion on. As you recall, we had discussed us as a city, and along with others, mainly the county, maybe leaving IWMA, and the main reason was the JPA agreement that was from 1994, basically tells the participants of the JPA, which is all the 7 cities and of course the county, that we will abide by ordinances that the JPA makes. And so that was essentially the rub, because, you know, it basically takes away our authority as council to regulate our city as we see fit and as our constituents ask us to be regulated. And so there was a lot of discussion about, you know, the essential overreach of the IWMA with regard to putting ordinances on that certainly their cities could do on their own, but that because Paso did not, they used this agency to enforce their will over Paso. So we have come together essentially to look at the JPA agreement and revise it. And we've voted basically 11-1 to adopt a new model, which would be implementing ordinances of only state mandates. In other words, things that the state of California mandates is what we would then regulate as a JPA. And of course, cities still retain their right to do whatever beyond that they wish. But so this is going to move forward with the board at the next meeting. Discussion was again continued, and we'll report back on that one at the next meeting next January, I believe it is. And the last one was Nacimiento Water Commission. Not a whole lot. We did talk about the 1959 agreement with Monterey. And that was when the San Antonio Dam was actually made and constructed. That at that time, we agreed to help them with basically 30% of that share of maintenance over the years for San Antonio in exchange for the 15,700 acre feet from Nacimiento Water, which is already currently built at that time. And so there's discussion right now to kind of look into that a little bit, because you know, as things get older and things happen with San Antonio, I think we need to renegotiate our agreement a little bit, and that's an opportunity. And John Pashong, of course, at the Board of Supervisors, is working on that with us to kind of talk to Monterey about maybe actually getting more additional allotment out of Nacimiento to compensate. So that's an ongoing talk, and we'll see how that goes. But essentially, those were the items right there of all these meetings that was kind of important to report. That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you. Mr. Strong?
Well, thank you. My first thing I'd do is like to comment something to Councilman Hammond, and that is I used to study a lot of water and actually was a consultant to the city and part of the legal aspects of it. And in the Monterey County's water plan, they're calling for a diversion tunnel between Nacimiento and Lake San Antonio in order to divert some of the Nacimiento water over to San Antonio, because the watershed for Nacimiento is 10 times larger than that for San Antonio, even though the capacities are similar. If we were to work on that negotiation in some way, possibly we could get an additional allocation of Nacimiento water in exchange for that, but rather than dumping that water down the river every time it's at flood stage, it could be diverted over to San Antonio, preserving that water for Monterey County and making more available for us. Just a thought. Other than that, my report. Since my last report, I attended the Central Coast Economic Forecast immediately before representing our city at the National League of Cities annual City Summit, where we heard many good suggestions for dealing with COVID-19 and its aftermath. We also passed many resolutions just before the conclusion of the summit 2 days later. Among the things approved were my rail policy amendments and an amended extension of my rail resolution calling for greater cooperation between the railroads and the local rail service operators for more and better service throughout the United States. The approximately 61 items can be accessed on the NLC website for those who are interested. I did take a break from the summit on the 19th to participate in the semi-annual meeting of the Central Coast Housing Working Group, which is promulgating the new California Central Coast Housing Best Practices Toolkit, and in process of distributing over $1 million in planning funds to our local jurisdictions. Paso Robles has its application in process, as I mentioned earlier tonight, and I delivered a copy of the toolkit to appropriate personnel at City Hall. On the 23rd, the City Manager Recruitment Ad Hoc Committee met. Of course, we heard that report earlier, and the final deadline for submitting the proposals for that process is going to be on the 4th. Other than that, I've been spending about 2 hours a day responding to emails and doing research on topics coming before us in the near future, including tonight. So tomorrow, I'll be chairing board meetings of the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments and the San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I did not attend any meetings, but I did have a quiet Thanksgiving here at home with my two nieces. We've been really busy at the pharmacy with flu shots and waiting to see when we get our COVID immunizations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I also attended the economic forecast. I also attended the League of California Cities Legislative Conference. I can tell you that member cities attending that conference have the same concerns we have moving into 2021, and that is pandemic recovery and economic development. I attended the board meeting for the Homeless Services Oversight Committee. Also received reports from our county public health officials on COVID-19 and participated in community stakeholders phone call conference. I was on Sound Off today on KPRL, where the topics of discovery, the topics of interest included questions about bike paths, homeless services, riverbed contamination, increased pandemic assistance for our businesses, and a request from Jen Alba for an update on our direction to provide a town hall meeting for the power companies presenting to citizens here in Paso Robles. And I'm wondering if the city manager has any update on that.
Yes, sir. CCCE and the city are working together. Sean Hauenstein is our coordinator for 2 webinars that are coming up within the next few weeks. And then based on how those go, we can also schedule a town hall style meeting that would just be hosted by the city of Paso Robles.
Okay, folks are anxious to have that happen. So as soon as we get some solid information, we should get that out as quickly as possible. A reminder to council members, it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, at the next meeting, we'll be talking about reorganization, Mayor Pro Tem's position. For the public who may not realize it, in addition to sitting as council members, our council members collectively sit on more than 36 different committees and subcommittees. If any of the council members would be interested in shifting assignments or trying something new, please let me know before the next council meeting so we can drop a chart of revised nominations.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would like to also, I forgot to say, I was looking at an email from Ty Lewis, our police chief, and report that they have been cleaning up the riverbed, especially down there behind Penny's, taking out 5.5 tons of trash and 115 shopping carts. And quite an effort. Again, I just want to make sure the public understands that the CAT team and Public Works and the police department are definitely working hard to try to clean up that riverbed. So that's improvement. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for reporting that. We are making the effort, and hopefully our efforts to moderate the homeless problem here in Paso Robles as time goes by will make that job a little less intensive. That's our hope anyway.
Yes, sir.
Coming up next, we have a Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, December 8th at 6:30 p.m., Library Board meeting Thursday, December 10th, 9 a.m., Senior Citizen Advisory Commission meeting Monday, December 14th at 1:30 p.m., City Council's next regular meeting is Tuesday, December 15th at 6:30 p.m. Deadline for submitting items for that meeting is tomorrow. Mr. City Manager, any further business to come before the council tonight?
Yes, sir. Just to follow up, thanks to Sarah Johnson Rios, the meeting the CCCE and the city are hosting is on December 8th at 6 p.m. All the information went out today in the city's newsletter and it will be on our website. In addition, on December 10th at 6 p.m., there will be the second meeting in Spanish, and people can go to 3 ceenergy.org to register.
Very good. Thank you for that information. I would also like to let people know that I've been a busy little beaver the last couple of days. I've done Zoom interviews with local people and mayors from around the county, putting together some holiday messages. And you can see those by going to pasomayor.com, which is a website that I support and maintain, not at taxpayer expense. And you can hear your friends and neighbors and possibly some folks you've never met before wishing you happy holidays, as I and the rest of the council do right now. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Hammond.
Second.
Second by Strong.
I have a motion by Councilman Hammond, second by Councilman Strong. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Happy holidays, and as always, thank you for your hard work.
So long.